Chapter 1849. 1 hour later, the blood demon finally decided to talk to Yi Fei calmly, coldly, and calmly. However, the blood demon's huge blood dragon demon soul had already shrunk to 2/3 of its original size. It was still lying limply on the ground, and its entire demon's soul was trembling. It looked at Xiao Qiao with fear in its eyes. Yi Fei stood beside the blood demon with his hands on his waist. He looked down at the blood demon in a very friendly manner. "Senior blood demon, I told you to be calm, but you refused to listen. Are you willing to answer my question now?" "Yes, I'm willing. Emperor Yi, this is like a flood rushing against the Dragon King's temple. Black Tortoise, help me put in a good word for him. We are all demons. The demon race protects the demon race." The blood demon trembled as he looked at the Dragon Tortoise. The Dragon Tortoise also looked at the blood demon curiously. Then, its eyes lit up. It went around the blood demon on the spot and went to the blood demon's broken flesh. It picked up a lot of large pieces of the blood dragon's flesh. "Big Black, what are you doing?" Ling Siki was confused. Xiao Qiao also looked at the Dragon Tortoise strangely. Yi Fei seemed to have thought of something. His expression became very strange. Roar! Roar! The Dragon Tortoise was very excited. It gestured with its dragon claws as it collected the essence of the blood dragon's flesh. Then, it took out a new black pot from somewhere. It sprayed dragon flames at the bottom of the pot and poured boiling oil into the pot. Then, the Dragon Tortoise threw a large piece of the blood dragon's flesh into the pot and fried it. "It's coming." Ling Siki and Xiao Qiao were stunned. The blood demon's demon soul was also stunned. Then, his entire demon soul couldn't help but tremble violently. "What sin have I, the blood demon, committed? The new emperor destroyed my physical body, this little girl destroyed my demon soul, and finally, this shameless black tortoise wants to eat my flesh." Of course, the Dragon Tortoise had its reasons for doing this. After all, dragon tortoises like to eat flood dragons. For example, when Yi Fei saw the Dragon Tortoise for the first time. The Dragon Tortoise was chasing a flood dragon. When he saw the flood dragon meat on the ground, he was shocked. Of course, Dragon Turtle wouldn't let it go. When Ling Siki saw Dragon Turtle deep-fried the dragon meat, she swallowed her saliva. She jumped up and picked up a piece of dragon meat and took a bite out of curiosity. "Eh?" Xiao Qiao looked at Ling Siki curiously. "Is that thing edible?" "Delicious. As expected, dragon meat is the most delicious." Ling Siki's eyes lit up as she took a bite. Her eyes were shining. Yi Fei stroked his chin and casually took a piece from the black pot. "The taste is indeed not bad. I didn't expect Big Black to have such skills. Senior Blood Demon, do you want a piece too?" Yi Fei naturally threw the cooked dragon meat to Blood Demon, who was lying on the ground. Blood Demon's dragon soul was so angry that its face turned ashen. There was an inexplicable fear in its heart. Then, Blood Demon's demon soul curled up into a ball like a deflated balloon. Blood Demon said with grief and indignation, "I don't know much about the Empress Concubine. I only heard that the Empress Concubine was once the only daughter of the God of Heaven. However, she failed to pass the divine tribulation and passed away. It is said that this matter dealt a great blow to the God of Heaven. Then, the God used an unknown method to let the Empress Concubine reincarnate. The Zhao Yu you are looking for is actually the Empress Concubine's reincarnation. She is also the God's daughter." Yi Fei said in a deep voice, "Since Zhao Yu is the God's daughter, why did the gods stop me from looking for her? Why did the gods seal off the news of Zhao Yu in the human battlefield?" Blood Demon smiled bitterly and said, "I am not very clear about the details. The god only said that he will not allow your appearance to affect the Empress Concubine again. It will also destroy the plan that he has been planning for tens of thousands of years. He will either kill you or drive you out of the human battlefield. This is the mission that the god gave me." Unfortunately, Yi Fei sneered and said, "Unfortunately, you did not expect that my realm would rise so quickly. So you only sent a martial emperor's clone to deal with me. You underestimate me too much. The god is the same. You are high and mighty. How can you understand us martial artists, who climbed up step by step from the bottom? How hard we will work. To tell you the truth, I will take Zhao Yu away. I will also find a way to defeat the god and the god. What they have done is no longer worthy of leading the human race. Blood Demon mocked with some dissatisfaction. Defeat the god and the god? Kid, I think you are daydreaming. Do you think primes are so easy to defeat? Yi Fei revealed a very bright smile. There are some things that, if you don't try, how will you know that you can't do it? Last question, is the one beside the god Zhao Yu or the Empress concubine? Also, was Lu Qing also captured by the god? When he asked this question, Yi Fei suddenly became very nervous. Since the god had the ability to let the Empress concubine's remnant soul reincarnate, then did the god also have the ability to erase Zhao Yu's memories? Or could he simply make Zhao Yu completely become the Empress concubine? The Blood Demon said with certainty, I don't know what went wrong. The god doesn't seem to have a way to make the Empress concubine's memories replace Zhao Yu's. Therefore, Zhao Yu is still Zhao Yu. As for Lu Qing, the god made her a maid to accompany the Empress concubine. Yi Fei didn't speak. He just stared at the Blood Demon's demon soul and observed his words and actions. When he confirmed that the Blood Demon wasn't lying, he heaved a long sigh of relief. When he came to the human battlefield, Yi Fei was most afraid that when he found Zhao Yu would have become a stranger. Only when the Blood Demon spoke did he truly stop worrying. That's great. Zhao Yu is still Zhao Yu. This is both good and bad news. Without the Empress concubine's memories, Zhao Yu isn't the god's true daughter. Given the god's ruthlessness, he will definitely make use of Zhao Yu to do something. Yi Fei hadn't forgotten that the god had deliberately abandoned the son of the god to plot against him. From this point alone, it could be seen how cold and ruthless the god was. Such a ruthless and ambitious person simply wouldn't care too much about family ties. The god must have a motive for capturing Zhao Yu. However, what exactly is it? Senior Blood Demon, I hope that you can return to the God's Hall and help me find out. Also, help me pass on a message to Zhao Yu and Lu Qing. What? You want me to betray the god? Kid, don't push your luck. You're going too far. The Blood Demon was furious. He had answered almost all of Yi Fei's questions, yet Yi Fei still wouldn't let him off. When had the Blood Demon ever felt so sullen? Chapter 1850. Boom. In order to gain Yi Fei's trust, Shui Yao could only hold back his tears and become the first traitor of the Divine Palace. He was also a traitor of the martial god realm. Yi Fei was naturally overjoyed. What the human Emperor Palace lacked now were martial gods like Shui Yao. Therefore, after Shui Yao made the demon soul blood oath and gained the recognition of the heavenly Tao, Yi Fei hurriedly helped Shui Yao up with a face full of self-blame. Shui Yao immediately helped him up and said, I acted rashly. Senior Shui Yao, you're sorry. I'm sorry. I don't feel wronged at all. To be able to receive guidance from the new emperor and be able to mend my ways and turn over a new leaf, I'm more than happy. How could I feel wronged? Ha 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 ha. Blood Demon bitterly laughed as he looked at the dragon skewers not too far away. Yi Fei's face turned serious and he hurriedly scolded, Big Black, who allowed you to eat? Quickly put away the black pot. From now on, Senior Shui Yao is one of us. Dragon Turtle let out a dissatisfied roar and put away the black pot unwillingly. Of course, Dragon Turtle could not bear to throw away the cooked dragon skewers in the black pot. Instead, it secretly shared it with Ling Siki. The veins on Shui Yao's forehead were throbbing. Xiao Chao also blinked. However, Xiao Chao only ate spiritual stones and immortal crystals and was not interested in the dragon meat. Yi Fei's face darkened even more. He pretended not to see it and diverted Shui Yao's attention. Senior Shui Yao, what is the relationship between the Divine Palace and the Sorcerer tribe? Since you came to deliver the letter, why are you hunting these ancient, desolate beasts here? It would have been better if Yi Fei did not mention it. Once he did, Shui Yao was so angry that his dragon soul trembled. He said furiously, "Your Highness, my status is too low and I don't know about the relationship between the Divine Palace and the Sorcerer tribe. However, there is a peerless ferocious person hiding near the lonely mountain ridge. I was nearly eaten by him as food. In order to treat my injuries, I found this group of ancient, desolate beasts. I wanted to devour their blood essence to recover, but I ended up meeting your Highness." As Blood Demon spoke, 2 streams of tears of regret rolled down his face. If he had known that he would meet Yi Fei and Xiao Chao here, he would have run as far away as he could even if he didn't heal himself. Yi Fei's face was filled with shock. "What, you met Zhao Shenzhen here? Where is he? Take me there immediately, I have something important to ask him." Blood Demon's face turned green and white on the spot. He was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. "What? That peerless monster? Your Highness, you know him and you still want to find him?" "That's right, take me there immediately. No matter whether this Zhao Shenzhen is a vicious person or not, I must see him. Remember, this is my order." Seeing that Blood Demon was still a little unwilling, Yi Fei's face immediately darkened. He was polite to Blood Demon because he saw that Blood Demon's nature wasn't bad. He had also taken care of the dragon turtle previously, so he didn't kill Blood Demon. If Blood Demon dared to disobey his orders or secretly betray him, Yi Fei wouldn't mind killing him. Blood Demon was also a smart person. When he sensed Yi Fei's killing intent, he immediately lowered his head and said, "I understand, Your Highness. Follow me." Blood Demon roared and suddenly, his Fey soul transformed into a blood-red Fey wind. He charged towards a certain direction in the lonely mountain ridge. Yi Fei immediately carried Xiao Chao and jumped onto the dragon turtle's back with Ling Siki. The dragon turtle followed closely behind Blood Demon. After flying for more than 10 days, they passed through countless mountains and ridges. Finally, in a village built with huge rocks, Xiao Chao was the first to sense a shocking spiritual energy fluctuation. This fluctuation was extremely terrifying. It almost filled the entire mountain village. Inside the village, there were mountains of corpses and seas of blood. The village was filled with the corpses of countless sorcerers, piled up into a mountain of corpses. On top of the mountain of corpses stood a cold-looking man with a scar on his face. Zhao Shenzhen. Yi Fei jumped down from Blood Demon. When Xiao Chao had sensed his spiritual energy, he had already sent the dragon turtle, Xiao Chao, and Ling Siki back into the space of the beast mark. "How is this possible? You vicious person, whose side are you on? You killed me and sorcerers." Blood Demon looked as if he was facing a great enemy. He seemed to have a deep fear of the cold-looking man. However, the cold man's gaze never once looked at Blood Demon. His gaze was cold and scrutinizing as he stared at Yi Fei. "You also know Zhao Shenzhen?" Yi Fei said in a low voice, "Zhao of the northern region. I've seen your portrait before." "I see. Come with me. As for this blood dragon, get him to scram. Remember, if you dare to reveal anything about us, even a god won't be able to protect you." Zhao Shenzhen's last words were spoken by Blood Demon. Blood Demon did not dare to refute. He did not know why, but when he faced Zhao Shenzhen, he felt even more fearful than when he faced a god or an earth venerable. Almost as soon as Zhao Shenzhen spoke, Blood Demon was so scared that he turned into a gust of bloody wind and fled pathetically. He did not even dare to stay in Lonely Ridge. In one breath, he fled back to the impregnable pass of the human race. Yi Fei could not help but feel puzzled. However, before he could do so, Zhao Shenzhen had already lifted his foot. With one step, he crossed tens of thousands of meters. It was as if he had shrunk the ground into an inch. Yi Fei was dumbstruck. This is the sorcerer race's technique? Senior. Could it be that you? Zhao Shenzhen said coldly, that's right. This is the sorcerer race's sorcery. However, this sorcery has been modified by Earth Venerable Hidden God. It can be used by martial artists like us. This way we can deceive the sorcerers to a certain extent. Earth Venerable Hidden God? Does our human race have such an Earth Venerable? Yi Fei followed behind Zhao Shenzhen, puzzled. Zhao Shenzhen did not stop. When he saw that Yi Fei could easily keep up with his speed, a hint of admiration appeared in his cold eyes. He asked in return, Yi Fei, do you know how many temples there are in the human race's battlefield? But before Yi Fei could reply, Zhao Shenzhen said in a low voice, there are a total of 5. They are the Human Emperor's Palace, the Capital God's Palace, the Human God's Palace, the God's Palace, and the Hidden God's Palace. Among them, the Human Emperor's Palace has already declined. The Capital God's Palace was disbanded long ago. The strongest ones now are the Human God's Palace and the God's Palace. The temples. Hidden behind these 2 temples is the Hidden God's Palace. Hidden God? Why have I never heard of it? Yi Fei was very curious. Could it be that Senior is from the Hidden God's Palace? That's right, I am a middle martial god from the Hidden God's Palace. As for why there are no rumors of the Hidden God's Palace on the human race's battlefield, it's very simple. The Hidden God's Palace is a temple in the dark. Our main responsibility is to gather information, or secretly eliminate elements that threaten the human race's battlefield. Furthermore, Chapter 1851. Zhao Shenzhen's words were very subtle. The Hidden Divine Hall did not have a divine hall. Instead, they treated the divine hall and the human shrine as their own divine hall. These words seemed very crazy and illogical. However, after careful consideration, Yi Fei could not help but reveal a horrified expression. Could it be that there are actually many martial gods in the Divine Hall and the human shrine who are members of the Hidden Divine Hall? The more he thought about it, the more terrified he felt. It should be known that man celestials and sky celestials stood at the pinnacle of this realm. It was extremely difficult to plant spies around such powerhouses. If Yi Fei hadn't coincidentally forced the blood demon to surrender, he would never have thought of this. Humph, you're not too stupid. Other divine halls may not be able to do it, but the Hidden Divine Hall is different because we don't exist in the first place. Not only do we have spies in the human tribe battlefield, but we also have spies in the sorcerer tribe. It's just that our power is not as strong as the human shrine and the divine hall. Pride flashed across Zhao Shenzhen's face. However, the Hidden Divine Hall was indeed worthy of being proud. It was easy to infiltrate the Divine Hall and the human shrine, but it was extremely difficult to infiltrate the sorcerer tribe, which was the mortal enemy of the human tribe. Yi Fei could not help but have a strong interest in the Hidden Divine Hall. Senior Shenzhen, since the Hidden Divine Hall is so powerful and you're a middle martial god of the Hidden Divine Hall, why don't you ask the Hidden Divine Hall to step in and rescue Zhao Yu and Lu Qing? Yi Fei could not help but have some doubts in his heart. Zhao Shenzhen also saw the doubts in Yi Fei's heart and immediately laughed coldly. Do you think I don't want to? However, different divine halls have different ways of doing things. The Hidden Divine Hall's way of doing things is to hide in the dark and never interfere in any battles on the human tribe battlefield. Unless someone tries to betray the human tribe, we will act and make that person disappear silently. Therefore, even though I know that the Divine God has captured my descendants, as long as the Divine God and the human God have not completely betrayed the human tribe, we will not act against these 2 earthly venerables. After all, they are the only 2 sovereign experts left on the human tribe battlefield. Of course, the Hidden God Temple could not. Zhao Shenzhen suddenly sighed and shook his head. sovereign of the hidden god Earth Sovereign, is of the same generation as the previous human emperor. Compared to the deities and empyrean gods, sovereign of the hidden god Earth Sovereign is too old. Even if he constantly seals himself, his lifespan will soon reach its end. If sovereign of the hidden god doesn't show himself, he can still intimidate deities and empyrean gods. If he shows himself and lets these two notice his old age, then even the hidden god Earthly Venerate will not be a match for deities and heavenly gods. Hearing this, Yi Fei also sighed in disappointment. Only now did he understand why the demon emperor couldn't find any information on Zhao Xinjian in the human battlefield. In the end, it turned out that the human god hall and sky god hall both had spies from the hidden divine hall helping to cover for each other. This way, the demon emperor naturally wouldn't be able to find any information about Zhao Xinjian. Suddenly, Yi Fei thought of something and his face turned ugly. Senior Divine Sword, you said that as long as the deities and heavenly gods don't betray us completely, the hidden god palace won't take action. Could it be that the deities and heavenly gods have partially betrayed the human race? He thought of how the heavenly gods had sent out blood demons to contact the sorcerer tribe. Zhao Xinjian also turned his head and looked coldly at Yi Fei. This is also the reason why I asked you to come. The 5 Great Supremes originally established the human battlefield to protect the human race. However, 30,000 years ago, the heavenly gods actually started to contact the sorcerer tribe secretly, wanting to marry his daughter to a high-ranking noble of the sorcerer tribe, so that he could marry into the sorcerer tribe. What? Marry into the sorcerer tribe? And with the daughter of a god? Yi Fei suddenly had a very bad feeling in his heart. Zhao Xinjian said coldly, "You didn't hear wrongly. The heavenly gods wanted to marry into the sorcerer tribe and even betrayed part of the human race. This matter was discovered by the hidden god Earthly Venerate. He personally took action and caused an accident to happen to the crown princess during her martial god tribulation, causing her soul to dissipate. However, the heavenly gods are indeed impressive. He wholeheartedly wanted to end the war with the sorcerer tribe and didn't hesitate to use sorcery to allow the crown princess to reincarnate with only a trace of her remnant soul." Yi Fei was no longer in the mood to listen to what Zhao Xinjian said next. At this moment, he finally understood why the heavenly gods had captured Zhao Yu. It's very obvious that the heavenly gods wanted to complete what he failed to do tens of thousands of years ago, which was to sacrifice the human race's interests and marry into the sorcerer tribe again. This is also something that the hidden god hall absolutely cannot tolerate. It's a pity that the hidden god's lifespan is limited and the heavenly god's defense is also impenetrable. We already have no way of stopping the heavenly god's crazy plan from Zhao Yu's side. The only one who can stop the heavenly gods is you, the new human sovereign." While Zhao Xinjian was speaking, Yi Fei unknowingly discovered that they had already passed through the sorcerer tribe's layers of defense in the lonely mountain range. At the end of the sky not far away, Yi Fei suddenly saw a magnificent giant city. "Little which city is in front?" At this moment, Zhao Xinjian pointed at the giant city and said indifferently, "Yi Fei, you're also a smart person. I won't say any unnecessary words. You just have to remember that if you want to save Zhao Yu, the only thing you can do is to destroy the heavenly gods' plan. As long as the heavenly gods and the sorcerer tribe are unable to marry into the sorcerer tribe, then the heavenly gods will have no reason to continue controlling Zhao Yu. When the time is right, Earth Sovereign Hidden God can also appear and directly force the heavenly gods and Earth Sovereigns to hand over Zhao Yu and Lu Qing. This way you can meet again." Yi Fei didn't speak. He only stared at the giant Little Witch city in a daze. Before coming to the battlefield of the human race, he had thought of many possibilities of Zhao Yu being captured. However, he had never thought that Zhao Yu's background would be so complicated. Not only was she the reincarnation of the Empress, but she was also the heavenly gods and the sorcerer tribe's marriage tool. Of course, although it was called a marriage, it was actually a one-sided compromise between the heavenly gods and the sorcerer tribe at the expense of the human race. This was basically no different from betraying one's country for glory. What Yi Fei couldn't accept the most was that this compromise was at the expense of Zhao Yu. Immediately, a shocking killing intent and anger filled him. He wanted nothing more than to immediately charge into the divine hall and fight to the death with the God of Heaven. However, his rationality told him that even if he went to the divine hall, it would be of no use. After all, he was just a small demigod. Even if he was a peerless demon, there was still a divine body above that. The heavenly gods are not only at the sovereign realm, they also have an eternal divine body. Unless I also break through to the sovereign realm and cultivate the divine body of despair, I won't be able to save Zhao Yu with my own strength. I can only rely on my master, the demon emperor, and the power of this earth's sovereign hidden god. A look of pain and unwillingness flashed through Yi Fei's eyes. At this moment, he finally knew why the earth's sovereign hidden god had asked Zhao Shenzhen to find him. Obviously, the earth's sovereign hidden god knew about the grudge between him and the heavenly gods. He also knew that his purpose in coming to the human race battlefield was to find Zhao Yu. Therefore, the earth's sovereign hidden god had asked Zhao Shenzhen to find him. His purpose was to let him enter the sorcerer tribe's trial city and destroy the marriage plan between the heavenly gods and the sorcerer tribe. Yi Fei stared at Zhao Shenzhen with a gloomy face. Is what the earth's sovereign hidden god said true? As long as I destroy the heavenly god's marriage plan, he can help me save Zhao Yu and Lu Qing? Zhao Shenzhen said coldly. Zhao Yu is also a descendant of the Zhao family. Am I willing to see Zhao Yu become a tool for the heavenly god's marriage? Chapter 1852. It's very simple. You just have to enter Little Witch City and do your best to pass the sorcerer's assessment. Then, think of a way to gain the trust of the great sorcerer or the sorcerer god and join the marriage alliance. Then, take the opportunity to assassinate that sorcerer on the way. That way, you can destroy the marriage alliance between the sky god and the sorcerer tribe. Zhao Shenzhen had obviously come prepared. He had already thought of a plan to deal with the sky god. This plan was not bad. As long as he assassinated the sorcerer tribe's marriage alliance member and cleverly shifted the blame to the sky god and the sorcerer tribe would fall out. However, there was a huge loophole in this plan. It's easy to assassinate a sorcerer, but I'm a human, not a sorcerer. As long as I enter Little Witch City, the great sorcerer inside will be able to find out that I'm a spy, right? Yi Fei looked doubtfully at Zhao Shenzhen, causing the latter to laugh out loud. Zhao Shenzhen said proudly, "Don't worry about that. Don't forget that we've joined the Hidden God Palace. Perhaps the Hidden God isn't the strongest in battle, but when it comes to concealing one's identity, even the sorcerer god's sorcery will find it difficult to see through the Hidden God's flaws. Coincidentally, I have a unique treasure that was refined by the Hidden God." Zhao Shenzhen took out a rainbow-colored robe and handed it to Yi Fei. He said in a low voice, "This is the Hidden God battle robe. It's an incomplete supreme weapon that the Hidden God carries with him. As long as your spirit wears this battle robe, your spirit will be hidden. Even if the sorcerer god personally checks your body, he won't be able to find out." Hidden God battle robe? Incomplete supreme weapon. Yi Fei was shocked. He was no longer a rookie who had just entered the human battlefield. Naturally, he knew that there were honorable weapons above divine weapons. Those were weapons that only sovereigns could use. However, just like the heavenly venerables in the Earth domain, after the end of the Archean era, there were no longer any honorable weapons. Even incomplete supreme weapons were extremely rare. If an earthly venerable obtained one, they would treat it as a treasure and treasure it. And now, the mysterious earthly venerable hidden god had given him an incomplete supreme weapon so easily? Even though it was only a non-offensive lesser venerable artifact, it was still considered a huge investment. Understanding the preciousness of this half-venerable artifact, Yi Fei could not help but feel puzzled. Since sovereign hidden god has such a treasure, why did he send an upper-level martial god to infiltrate the sorcerer tribe to assassinate the target? Why must I go? Could it be that this half-martial highness weapon has some flaws? Zhao Xinjian praised. You guessed right, this half-venerable artifact can hide one's soul and pretend to be a shaman, but at the same time, it cannot use any true essence or martial arts. Even if a martial god wears it, he will immediately become an ordinary person. Even if he sneaks into Shaman City, he will not be able to assassinate his target. But you're different. Zhao Xinjian didn't say anything else. He just looked deeply at Yi Fei. Yi Fei didn't ask any more questions. Instead, he simply activated the invisible god battle robe. This shadowy battle robe immediately turned into a black light and entered Yi Fei's body, then wore on Yi Fei's soul. Boom! The moment he put on the battle robe, Yi Fei immediately felt that all of his true essence had disappeared into thin air, including his soul. He was so frightened that he quickly visualized his soul and took off the battle robe. Only then did Yi Fei once again feel the fluctuations of his soul and true essence in his body. Amazing, too amazing. As expected of a half-venerable artifact, it really is a half-venerable artifact. Yi Fei was very satisfied with the function of the invisible god battle robe. This way, he could successfully infiltrate Shaman City and find an opportunity to assassinate the Shaman tribe's relatives, thus ruining the god's plan. Moreover, Yi Fei was different from other people. If other martial gods wore the invisible god battle robe, although they could hide their soul, they would not be able to mobilize their true essence. Without true essence, martial artists would not be able to use many martial art. Their strength would instantly be reduced by 99%. However, Yi Fei was different. He was a person abandoned by the heavens and could cultivate any kind of power. Even if he had no true essence and could not use martial arts, he still had strong spiritual energy. He could learn shaman arts and still possess strong combat strength. Senior Xinjian, I'm leaving. Send my regards to the hidden god Earth Venerable for me. I, Yi Fei, will remember today's kindness. After putting on the invisible god battle robe again, Yi Fei suddenly bowed to Zhao Xinjian solemnly. He was thanking Zhao Xinjian for his secret help and also showing his determination to the hidden god palace. He was definitely going to Little Shaman City. He would also find a way to assassinate the Shaman tribe's relatives. Zhao Xinjian also solemnly returned the bow and said, Emperor Yi, to be able to destroy the god's plan, protect the interests of the human tribe, and rescue Zhao Yu, it all depends on you. This Zhao wishes you victory in advance. Farewell. Zhao Xinjian was, after all, a martial god of the human tribe. He did not dare to stay outside Little Shaman City for too long. Seeing that Yi Fei had made up his mind, he moved his feet and in the blink of an eye, he traveled a terrifying distance of tens of thousands of meters. It was as if he had shrunk the ground into an inch. In a few breaths, he had disappeared without a trace. Yi Fei secretly clicked his tongue as he watched. He was shocked by Zhao Xinjian's terrifying strength. At the same time, a strange thought suddenly appeared in his mind. However, he did not have time to think about it. Perhaps it was because Yi Fei had stayed outside for too long, or perhaps it was because there were too many magi heading towards Little Shaman City. Very quickly, a group of bronze magi flew over from afar as fast as lightning. They were all aggressive as they opened their mouths and cursed, "What's going on? My divination clearly shows that this place is hidden." There's a disgusting smell of a human. Why is the one standing here a little brat? Haha, it's obviously your divination that's too lousy. How can you blame others? Look at my great overarching heavenly stars divination technique. This time, we'll definitely find that new emperor who's hiding. Hiding? Where can he hide? It's fine if other human tribe warriors barge in, but if the human emperor or the human emperor's palace barge in, we'll find him even if we have to dig 3 feet into the ground. Don't say anything to him. Beat him to death on the spot and feed him to the wild beast. A bronze shaman roared fiercely, causing many shamans to echo his words. Yi Fei's face immediately darkened. What was wrong with these shamans? They did not seem to hate other human tribe warriors, but when the human emperor's palace was mentioned, it was as if they had eaten gunpowder. They were extremely fiery. No, I have to ask clearly. I can also use this group of shamans to test the hidden god battle robe and see if it's really as magical as Zhao Xinjian said. Before these sorcerers left, Yi Fei hurriedly walked up to them and greeted them. Greetings, holy masters. There's something I don't understand. The warriors of the human emperor palace and the other divine halls are all humans. Why do you only care about the human emperor palace and ignore the warriors of the other divine halls? He greeted them with the standard shaman etiquette. Chapter 1853. What Gao Shuai? Yi Fei was stunned for a moment before he reacted. This so-called Gao Shuai was actually the pseudonym used by the previous human emperor, Wang Bai. Yi Fei was immediately depressed. Just this name alone made him have the urge to beat someone up. The surrounding bronze wizards also looked at him with suspicion and vigilance. However, the invisible god battle robe's effect was indeed extraordinary. Even though these wizards felt that Yi Fei was strange, they did not sense Yi Fei's presence. The bloodline of the human race. In other words, the strange kid standing in front of them was indeed a pure-blooded wizard. Yi Fei also smiled and said, "Holy masters, you may not know this, but I am not from a tribe. I am a refugee who calls the world my home." The wizard tribe was different from the human tribe. They only had cities and did not have a country. Instead, they had many large and small tribes. The strong tribes would annex and destroy the weak tribes. This was a common occurrence, and the remnants of the tribes that were annexed would become refugees, roaming the world as their home. For example, Shang Jiao had once left the tribe and became a refugee and a corpse carrier. Therefore, Yi Fei's answer was flawless. Hearing that Yi Fei was not from a tribe but a refugee, many wizards showed sympathetic expressions. After all, the internal strife of the wizard tribe was more serious and bloody than that of the human tribe. Almost every year, there would be tribes that were destroyed, and many new tribes would suddenly rise. For example, if Yi Fei's tribe was destroyed when he was young, it was understandable that he did not know many things. Immediately, a bronze sorcerer who sympathized with Yi Fei walked over and patted Yi Fei's shoulder, comforting him. "Little sorcerer, you look like an honest person. We'll give you a way out and bring you into Little Sorcerer City." Yi Fei quickly thanked him. "Thank you, holy masters." "Oh, the legend of the previous human emperor. Oh, you mean that Gao Shuai? This person's sins are too numerous to be recorded. It is said that when he was still a martial god, he often came to our lonely mountain ridge to show off. He killed and injured many great wizards. In the end, this person's arrogance finally angered the first wizard at that time. The sorcerer god personally took action and trapped him in the lonely mountain ridge. Just when many great wizards thought that he was dead for sure, Gao Shuai did not hesitate to surrender to the sorcerer god. Yi Fei was extremely shocked. Surrender? How is that possible? That bastard is the human emperor. How could he surrender? The bronze sorcerer said hatefully, "This is the shamelessness of the previous human emperor. This person can say good things, but he looks honest and dull, but he is actually full of evil tricks." In order to gain the trust of the sorcerer god, he actually shamelessly wrote a letter of surrender with blood on the spot. He even bewitched the sorcerer god, saying that he was willing to steal the human emperor's seal and come here to surrender. In the end, the sorcerer god believed it and happily let Gao Shui go. He even waited outside the human tribe's impregnable pass for 10 years. Unfortunately, the sorcerer god did not wait for the human emperor's seal. Instead, the previous human emperor came and killed him outside the impregnable pass with the human emperor's seal. At this point, all the wizards present were filled with righteous indignation. Even Yi Fei felt that the sorcerer god's death was too unjust. Moreover, this was not the only great achievement that Wang Bai had. After the death of the sorcerer god, the sorcerer tribe was enraged. They swore to gather their army and fight to the death with the human tribe. In the end, it was Wang Bai who entered the lonely mountain ridge alone and personally hung the sorcerer god's corpse and whipped it. He even said that 10 days later, he would use the human tribe's army to flatten the lonely mountain ridge and completely destroy the sorcerer tribe. However, when the great sorcerers were gathering their troops and preparing for the final battle with the human tribe's army 10 days later, the human emperor's palace took advantage of the fact that the sorcerer tribe's rear was empty. They suddenly attacked little sorcerer cities and looted them. It was said that the human emperor's palace had taken away all the bricks used to pave the roads. Later, Wang Bai's actions finally enraged all the sorcerer gods. At that time, there were more than a dozen sorcerer gods who held the heaven and earth sacrificial ceremony consecutively. They planned to open up a second battlefield and bypass the human tribe's impregnable pass to attack the Zulong continent, where the human emperor's palace's forces were the most concentrated. In the end, Wang Bai dared to run in front of the sorcerer gods alone and made a spiritual oath, saying that he was willing to pay any price in exchange for a 100-year ceasefire with the sorcerer tribe. Although the sorcerer gods hated Wang Bai to the core, they were greedy for the great benefits that Wang Bai promised and saw that Wang Bai had made a spiritual oath that no warrior would dare to violate. Not only did the sorcerer gods easily give up on the heaven and earth sacrificial ceremony that had already been held successfully, but it was said that there were even more. The sorcerer gods were so hot-headed that they planned to betroth their daughters to Wang Bai on the spot. Hearing this, Yi Fei was also shocked. How is that possible? Once a warrior makes a spiritual oath, his soul will be destroyed immediately if he violates it. How can the human emperor still be alive? Many bronze sorcerers said hatefully, "This is the most shameless part of the previous human emperor." Later on, the sorcerer gods waited for 100 years in vain, but they still didn't see Wang Bai lead the human emperor's palace to open the human tribe's impregnable pass to surrender. Only then did our spies find out that the human emperor was so shameless that he used a substitute when making the oath. The great commander has always been using a fake name. It can't be. A spiritual oath can be made using a fake name? The heavenly axiom can accept that? Yi Fei didn't quite believe it. Many sorcerers sneered together. If that great commander Gao secretly hid a real person on his body when he was lying and made a real spiritual oath, would the heavenly axiom accept it? It can actually be done like that. Yi Fei was so shocked that his eyes widened. He would never have thought that a spiritual oath could be played like that. Needless to say, Wang Bai must have secretly hidden someone in the beast mark space. This way, when Wang Bai made a fake oath, he would let the person in the dark make a real spiritual oath. This way, the heavenly axiom would sense it and naturally accept the oath. Moreover, the person making the oath would be hiding on Wang Bai's body. The heavenly axiom senses would naturally fall on Wang Bai's body at the same time. The sorcerer gods would naturally have a huge misunderstanding and think that the person making the spiritual oath was Wang Bai himself. Not only did they voluntarily give up the blood sacrifice of millions of people, but they were also cruelly fooled. What was even more infuriating was that Wang Bai's spiritual oath was not enough. He even bewitched the sorcerer gods to make the ancestral sorcerer oath as well, promising the sorcerer tribe that they would not attack the human tribe's impregnable pass for 1,000 years. The sorcerer god's original intention was to give Wang Bai enough time to eliminate the dissidents, unify the human tribe, and then obediently surrender to the sorcerer tribe. It was not until 100 years later that Wang Bai not only did not take the initiative to surrender, but also used only a short 100 years to break through to earthly venerable rank that the sorcerer gods realized that not only had they been humiliated and fooled, but because of the ancestral sorcerer oath, no matter how furious they were, they could not wait to eat Wang Bai's flesh and drink Wang Bai's blood. Chapter 1854. Kid, do you understand now? When other human warriors enter Lonely Mountain Ridge, as long as we don't encounter them, we can pretend we didn't see them. However, if warriors from Human Emperor Hall barge in, we have to kill every single one of them. Alright, Little Witch City is right in front of us. Go to the Ancestral Sorcerer Temple to pay your respects. Come back and join our team after receiving the blessing of the Ancestral Sorcerer Temple. Our team is short of people. As the bronze sorcerers spoke, they led Yi Fei into Little Witch City. Thanks to these sorcerers, the guards did not even question Yi Fei's unfamiliar face. Yi Fei entered Little Witch City smoothly and was led to the Ancestral Sorcerer Temple by this group of enthusiastic bronze sorcerers. Only then did he realize what was going on. Little Witch City was similar to the City of Trials in the human tribe's impregnable past. It was a place where newcomers gathered. Only in Little Witch City, the sorcerers who passed the test could officially head to the human tribe's impregnable pass and fight with the human tribe. Of course, to prevent spies from sneaking in, Little Witch City also built a temple. However, it was not the sorcerer god that was worshipped, but the 12 ancestral sorcerers that the sorcerer tribe worshipped. This made Yi Fei secretly worried. After all, he was not a real sorcerer tribe member. If the ancestral sorcerer temple found any loopholes, he would be done for. However, he had to go to the ancestral sorcerer temple. After all, only by being recognized by the ancestral sorcerer temple could he move freely in Little Witch City and find out about the sorcerer tribe's marriage. Thinking of this, Yi Fei's eyes became determined. Fight. Anyway, there is no place for me in the human tribe's battlefield. Other than finding a way to join the sorcerer tribe and sabotage the marriage plan between the sky god and the sorcerer tribe, I have no other way out. Holy Masters, what should I do when I reach the ancestral sorcerer temple? Yi Fei asked carefully as he secretly observed the situation in the ancestral sorcerer temple. He realized that this place was similar to the human tribe's temple. However, the sorcerer tribe priests who came and went were all very powerful. Their mental nebulas even formed all kinds of strange phenomena behind them. Some of them were even about to form innate divine demons. Many junior magi like Yi Fei also came to the ancestor Magus temple. After all, the mental strength of the sorcerer tribe was naturally strong. Therefore, even a sorcerer who had just condensed his spirit sea could use sorcery to borrow the power of heaven and earth and possess the combat strength of an emperor-to-be. If a sorcerer could condense a mental nebula, it would be easy for him to fight against 3 martial emperors. However, even though the sorcerer tribe was innately strong, they were not strong enough after birth. For example, once a martial artist reached the level of a demigod or an Einherjar, they would also understand the laws of heaven and earth. The advantage of the wizard's will would disappear, and the combat power of both sides would be equal. At the sovereign level, the combat power of a martial artist would surpass that of a sorcerer. A martial artist, earthly venerable, would be able to defeat 3 sorcerer deities. Therefore, even though the human gods and divine gods were the only 2 supreme experts on the battlefield of the human tribe, many sorcerer gods of the sorcerer tribe were still at a loss. They could only use their advantage in numbers to suppress the human tribe, but they still couldn't break through the human tribe's impregnable fortress. I guess this is also the reason why the sorcerer tribe wants to marry the divine gods. A head-on battle would only result in both sides suffering. Instead, the best choice is to subdue the enemy without fighting. However, the human tribe can't let down our guard. Yi Fei suddenly remembered what the heaven and earth venerables had told him. The sorcerer tribe was nothing to worry about. What was really frightening was actually the Dark Lord standing behind the sorcerer tribe. This was a real celestial venerable, a terrifying existence that had escaped from the heaven realm. The only thing that Yi Fei felt fortunate was that the Dark Lord was injured and had been in a deep sleep to heal his injuries. He couldn't personally attack the human tribe's impregnable fortress. Therefore, the Dark Lord controlled the sorcerer tribe to attack the human tribe's impregnable fortress through the sorcerer tribe. This could be considered a great fortune in the misfortune of the human tribe's battlefield. After all, if a celestial venerable were to attack, no matter how strong the human tribe's impregnable fortress was, it would definitely not be able to withstand the celestial venerable's attack. Boy, the 12 ancestral gods are in front of you. Hurry up and choose the ancestral god to worship. The ancestral god will examine your identity and bestow upon you the blessing of the sorcerer tribe. While Yi Fei was thinking, the bronze sorcerers had unknowingly brought him to the 12 tall deity statues. These were the statues of the 12 ancestral sorcerers. It was said that the 12 ancestral sorcerers were all innate divine demons and were the origin of the sorcerer tribe. Therefore, every sorcerer tribe respected the ancestral sorcerers from the bottom of their hearts. Before Yi Fei arrived, the 12 ancestral sorcerers were already crowded with junior sorcerers who had come to worship. These junior sorcerers had come from their respective continents to participate in the war. Most of them were very young, some were only 11 or 12 years old. They were comparable to the strength of the human tribe's quasi-emperors. From this, it could be seen how powerful the sorcerer tribe was. Moreover, not only were there junior sorcerers, Yi Fei also saw many half-sorcerers and even human tribe martial artists in the temple. However, their status was very low. They were either servants or slaves. Ha ha ha, we have finally arrived at the ancestral sorcerer temple. I am Jin Wu from the Tianfeng tribe. I am willing to sacrifice 100 livestock to worship the ancestral god. May the ancestral god bless my Tianfeng tribe for generations to come and for our name to last forever. Just as Yi Fei was hesitating about which ancestral sorcerer to worship, the laughter of an arrogant young man suddenly came from the front of the ancestral sorcerer Di Zhang's statue. His laughter quickly attracted the attention of many sorcerers. Look, it is Jin Wu from the Tianfeng tribe. It is said that his father has reached the limit of a grand sorcerer. Within 1,000 years, there is a great possibility that he will become a sorcerer deity. No wonder. I reckon that only the great nobles of the Tianfeng tribe can sacrifice 100 martial emperors to worship the ancestral god at once. The Tianfeng tribe had 100 martial emperors? Yi Fei's expression suddenly changed. Of course, he knew about the Tianfeng tribe. Shang Jiao had once come from the Tianfeng tribe. However, Yi Fei was not shocked by this. Instead, he was shocked by Jin Wu's words and the 100 human tribe martial artists who had been led out like livestock. What is going on? Didn't you say that you were going to sacrifice livestock? Why are there martial emperors from the human tribe? Yi Fei's expression was extremely gloomy. As he was too agitated, Yi Fei's tone was slightly louder. This attracted the strange gazes of many sorcerers. A few bronze sorcerers who were standing beside Yi Fei quickly kicked Yi Fei secretly. Then, they gathered around and greeted the sorcerers. Senior brothers, this little brat is a new refugee. Therefore, he does not know the rules. Refugee? So he is a homeless person whose tribe has been destroyed. No wonder he does not know etiquette. Chapter 1855. Following Jin Wu's order, 100 priests in robes walked over with large swords in their hands. Yi Fei's eyes flashed with deep hostility and killing intent. He had an impulse. As the human emperor, he could not watch these human martial emperors being treated like livestock. They were being sacrificed. However, his rationality told him that if he showed any abnormality at this time, he would attract the attention of the sorcerer tribe and expose his identity. Crack! The crisp sound of a blade cutting into bone could be heard in front of the statue of ancestor sorcerer Di Jiang. Then, countless sorcerers cheered enthusiastically and excitedly. Jin Wu was especially excited. As the martial emperors were killed one by one and sacrificed to the ancestor sorcerer, the statue of ancestor sorcerer Di Jiang suddenly emitted a bright light. It formed a golden vortex and suddenly swallowed Jin Wu and everything around him. This caused countless sorcerers to cheer excitedly. At this time, countless fanatical sorcerers cheered and knelt down in front of the statue of ancestor Di Jiang. The ancestor sorcerer has appeared. The ancestor sorcerer has appeared. I wonder how powerful the ancestor sorcerer's blessings will be through this sacrifice. Needless to say, the sacrifice of 100 martial emperors is a rare sight. I can guarantee that the ancestor Jin Wu will be able to condense a golden treasure and obtain the qualification to break through to the senior sorcerer level. In the end, even the group of bronze sorcerers who brought Yi Fei to the divine hall began to discuss excitedly. Yi Fei's face was as cold as steel as he looked at all of this coldly. However, he felt as if his heart had been ruthlessly stabbed with a knife. His heart was bleeding. This was the sorcerer tribe. Outside the city, he felt the passion of the sorcerer tribe. Now, in the divine hall, he felt the cruelty of the sorcerer tribe even more. I finally understand why the hidden god temple tried so hard to destroy the marriage between the sky god and the sorcerer tribe. Yi Fei took a deep breath. Then, he no longer looked at the crazy sorcerers and walked towards the 12 statues of the ancestor sorcerer. He was enduring, and he had to endure. I must not be impulsive. At the very least, when I have no strength, I must learn to be patient. Patience is not weakness, but to make me stronger. Yi Fei finally walked in front of the statue of the ancestor sorcerer Hutu. It was an almost perfect female ancestor sorcerer. However, Hutu's body was still filled with a tyrannical and terrifying aura, just like the other ancestor sorcerer ancestor's statue. When it sensed Yi Fei's approach, the statue of the ancestor sorcerer seemed to come to life. Hutu's bodies as Hutu as sorcerer ancestor sorcerer. Suddenly an extremely terrifying pressure fell on Yi Fei's body. Originally, at this moment, most of the magi who were worshipping would immediately kneel down to express their reverence for the ancestral magus and pray for the ancestral magus blessings. However, after seeing the bloody and cruel scene just now, the ancestral magus had no choice but to kneel. Although Yi Fei didn't make a move, his heart was filled with boundless anger and murderous intent. It's all because of these ancestral sorcerers. If you didn't do the ancestral sorcerer's blessing, Jin Wu wouldn't have slaughtered human warriors like livestock. So what if you are ancestral sorcerers? We warriors fight against the heavens and the earth, slaying gods and demons. We have never been afraid of this world, so why should we be afraid of you ancestral sorcerers? You want me to kneel? I won't. Because he was lost in thought, Yi Fei's body actually stood even straighter under the mountain-like pressure, like a sharp sword. His face was like iron, and his heart was like blood. Just like that, Yi Fei looked straight into the strange eyes in the void. Then, he felt the pressure around him become more and more terrifying. In the beginning, there was only one pair of eyes staring at him. However, as Yi Fei fell into a daze, and a strong determination rose from the bottom of his heart, the number of pairs of eyes in the void suddenly increased to 2, 3, 4, until there were 12 pairs of eyes staring at Yi Fei in unison. Some of the gazes were dignified, some cold, some curious, and some mysterious. When they all gathered together, Yi Fei's body suddenly emitted a huge boom. It was as if 12 terrifying mountains were pressing down on his body at the same time. Only then did Yi Fei come to his senses. The massacre just now had a huge impact on him. He didn't realize that he had made a huge mistake. He actually stood in front of the ancestral sorcerers without kneeling, and this attracted the attention of all the sorcerers. Originally, these sorcerers were paying attention to the strange phenomenon of Jin Wu's sacrifice. But when they saw that Yi Fei could withstand the gaze of 12 ancestral sorcerers and still stand without kneeling, these sorcerers couldn't help but widen their eyes in shock. What's wrong with that little sorcerer? How can he withstand the gaze of 12 ancestral sorcerers' eyes at the same time? Something's not right. His spiritual energy. How can it be gold? That seems to be the legendary golden treasure. Boom. Under the gaze of the 12 ancestral sorcerers' eyes, Yi Fei couldn't use his inner yuan, and the pressure was like that of an innate fiend god. It even forced out the golden spirit sea in Yi Fei's mind. A bright phenomenon began to appear behind Yi Fei. It was a golden ocean that was surging and roaring. Above the ocean, 12 sun-like eyes were coldly sizing up Yi Fei. This shocked Yi Fei, and he suddenly felt that all his secrets were about to be seen through. It was an illusion. But at this moment, Yi Fei suddenly felt that the invisible divine battle robe in his body was emitting a strange energy wave. It actually allowed him to withstand the piercing of these 12 eyes. In the end, these are just ancestral sorcerers' god statues, and not innate fiend gods like the real ancestral sorcerers. Yi Fei suddenly understood, and at the same time, his heart calmed down. Just as he controlled his emotions and was about to stop while he was ahead and kneel down. The moment the 12 eyes forced out Yi Fei's golden spirit sea, they suddenly turned into 12 golden whirlpools and rushed to swallow Yi Fei. This scene caused countless magi to be horrified. Heavens, who is that kid? He actually received the blessings of all 12 ancestral gods at the same time. A golden spirit sea that seems to be the legendary golden treasure. The most powerful treasure that can break through the sorcerer god. What golden treasure? Damn it, why did he trigger the ancestral sorcerer's blessings at this moment? Doesn't he know that his actions will interrupt my ancestral sorcerer's blessings? Chapter 1856. One must know that there were different grades of divine treasures. From the lowest to the highest, they were green divine treasures, silver divine treasures, gold divine treasures, and the legendary gold divine treasures. Correspondingly, there were green-skinned warlocks, silver-skinned warlocks, and gold-skinned warlocks, who were of an even higher level, the stone-skinned warlock god. Originally, with Jin Wu's talent, even if he didn't hold a sacrifice, he could easily turn his ordinary green divine treasure into a silver divine treasure with the help of the power of the ancestral sorcerer that existed in the unseen world when he received the blessing of the ancestral sorcerer. He could then turn his ordinary green divine treasure into a silver divine treasure and cultivate into a silver-skinned sorcerer. However, as a noble son of the Heavenly Wind tribe, Jin Wu was not satisfied with just becoming a silver-skinned sorcerer. Therefore, he paid a high price to find 100 martial emperors of the human race to perform a blood sacrifice. He hoped to borrow more power from the ancestral sorcerer statue so that he could directly become a silver-skinned sorcerer. He could become a gold divine treasure that could break through the gold-skinned sorcerer. Jin Wu did not expect that when he was full of himself and was about to succeed, Yi Fei would suddenly interfere and forcefully interrupt his ancestral sorcerer's blessing. All of his hard work had gone down the drain. Jin Wu was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of silver blood. Then, his silver divine treasure went berserk. Inside the 12 golden vortexes, Yi Fei did not know that his actions would inadvertently interrupt Jin Wu's ancestral sorcerer's blessing. In fact, when the 12 ancestral sorcerers' blessing were given at the same time, Yi Fei was also shocked. He almost thought that he had exposed himself. Fortunately, although he was being engulfed by the golden whirlpools of the 12 ancestral sorcerers, he did not feel any pressure as heavy as a mountain. On the contrary, he could feel the 12 mysterious energies rapidly merging with the golden spirit sea in his mind. During the process of fusion, a memory that did not belong to Yi Fei gradually emerged from the depths of his mind. In the end, these memories even condensed into a stalwart figure that sat silently in his spirit sea. Seeing this figure, Yi Fei could not help but be shocked. "Shang Jiao, how is this possible? Back then, I clearly broke free from the fusion of your memories. You should have been completely dead by now. How could you still appear in front of me?" The tall and sturdy silhouette finally faced Yi Fei. That was a half-petrified magus, looking exactly like Shang Jiao. Shang Jiao sat above Yi Fei's golden spirit power with his legs crossed and said coldly, "You won't know how magical magic can be if you haven't learned any magic. I died in heaven and earth, yet it still lives in your memories. You must be very confused as to why you can still remember a lot of common knowledge about the shamans even though you failed to fuse with my memories, right?" Yi Fei's expression changed. How could he not understand that the changes in his mind and the memories of the sorcerer tribe were all caused by Shang Jiao? Moreover, after so many years, Shang Jiao was still hiding in his memory. God knows how many secrets he had seen. Yi Fei's face suddenly became very ugly, and he felt a chill run down his spine. Just like what Shang Jiao had said, it was very difficult for him to understand the horror of magic and all kinds of unimaginable methods without learning any magic. But soon, Yi Fei forced himself to calm down. The living Shang Jiao was very scary, but the dead Shang Jiao only had a memory left. If he could hurt him, he would have done it long ago. Why would he wait until now? "Tell me, what are you trying to do by using magic to hide in my memory?" Yi Fei said in a deep voice. "You know what I want to do." Shang Jiao also stared coldly at Yi Fei. Yi Fei smiled bitterly. He had fused with Shang Jiao's memories before, so of course, he knew what Shang Jiao wanted to do. The woman he loved the most was killed by his half-brother. He was the son of the tribe leader, but he was reduced to a slave and lived a miserable life. But even so, Shang Jiao still persevered and walked on the path of a magus. But when he realized that even if he became a gold magus, he couldn't revive the only woman he loved, in despair, Shang Jiao walked on the path of revenge. He wanted to kill the father who shamed him, the brother who humiliated him and destroyed the grave of the woman he loved the most in front of him. But the Heavenly Wind tribe was too strong, and Shang Jiao's revenge failed in the end. He had no choice but to drag his severely injured body and escape from the sorcerer tribe. He came to the human tribe and established the Shang clan, creating the Great Void technique. But Shang Jiao was not satisfied. Even when he established the Shang clan, he only wanted revenge. He also hoped that there would be a genius among the descendants of the Shang clan who could fuse with his memories and become another Shang Jiao, continuing his path of revenge. Coincidentally, Yi Fei entered the Shang clan's sorcerer world at that time and unintentionally passed the tests set by Shang Jiao. In the end, he was almost fused with Shang Jiao's memories and became another Shang Jiao, a Shang Jiao who was bent on revenge. At that time, I used the Undying Sword Soul to forcefully shatter Shang Jiao's memory sorcery and break free. I don't know if I can destroy the last memory that Shang Jiao hid in my mind if I activate the Undying Sword Soul now. Yi Fei's expression changed, and he kept calculating in his heart. Shang Jiao stared coldly at Yi Fei. "The Undying Sword Soul in your body is indeed powerful. But back then, you were able to break my memory sorcery because you were in my memory and could do whatever you wanted. But now, it's not you in my memory, it's me in your memory. If you break my memory, it's equivalent to breaking your own memory. If you want to lose all your memories, forget Zhao Yu, forget everything you've experienced, you can activate the undying sword soul. You're threatening me. I hate being threatened the most. Yi Fei suppressed his anger and felt his hair stand on end. If Shangjiu even knew about the undying sword soul, what other trump cards did he have to deal with this crazy vengeful great sorcerer? You can understand this as a threat, but I just want to borrow your hand to help me take revenge. You've experienced my memories and naturally understand what kind of feelings I have for Xiao Yu. She's my everything. If she's alive, I'll live. If she's dead, I won't be able to revive her and I'll be dead. Even if I use sorcery to live in your memory, what you see isn't the real me. I'm just a walking corpse. Yi Fei's vision changed. What appeared in front of him was no longer that brilliant great sorcerer, but a skeleton. A bloody, skinless corpse. At the same time, Shangjiu's last memory in the Tianfeng tribe appeared in Yi Fei's mind. At that time, Shangjiu was surrounded by hundreds of gold-ranked great sorcerers from the Tianfeng tribe. He fought back and killed until blood flowed like a river. His killing caused the entire Tianfeng tribe to tremble in fear. However, the only thing Shangjiu didn't fight back was his father. He allowed the tribe leader of the Tianfeng tribe to activate sorcery and peel off his great sorcerer's golden skin. Then, Shangjiu's bloodied face revealed a sad and cold smile. "Father, I'll return what I owe you. But what you owe me, I'll definitely take back." Chapter 1857. However, there was no point in regretting it. The hatred had already been formed. Father and son had turned against each other. From now on, they would not rest until one of them was dead. However, Shangjiu did not manage to wait for that day to come. He realized that even though he had broken through to the sorcerer god level and reached the limit of this world, even though he had cultivated sorcery to an unprecedented level, he could not resurrect his lover. He could not even see her again. The last thing Yi Fei saw was Shangjiu burying himself in despair the moment he broke through to the sorcerer god level. We cannot be together when we are alive, but when we die we can return to this world together, Shangjiu murmured. In the end, he created a sorcerer world with his own hands and buried himself. His entire body gradually petrified and turned into the huge stone statue that Yi Fei had seen before. Shangjiu was indeed dead. He died in this world, but his hatred did not die. His memories did not die. Therefore, he used the most mysterious memory sorcery to keep himself alive in Yi Fei's memories. In the end, when Yi Fei entered the ancestral sorcerer temple and received the ancestral sorcerer's blessing, Shangjiu's memories. His memories were awakened once again. Yi Fei finally saw Shangjiu's final ending. He could not tell if he was upset or something else, but he understood Shangjiu's pain and sympathized with him. But understanding does not mean that I agree with you. Sympathizing does not mean that I have to work for you. Why should I avenge you? Yi Fei was very unhappy. In the human battlefield, Wang Bai made him the human emperor for no reason. Yi Fei tolerated it. Then, in the ancestral sorcerer temple, Shangjiu forcefully dragged him away to take his revenge. Yi Fei would definitely not tolerate it if it was forced upon him. Shangjiu lived for the love in his heart, while Yi Fei lived for the freedom in his heart. Shangjiu said coldly and stubbornly, "You passed my test and merged with my memories. Then, you must avenge me. Helping me is helping yourself if you want to live to see Zhao Yu again." Yi Fei's eyes were suddenly filled with murderous intent. "Shangjiu, what do you mean? You better explain yourself." Shangjiu sneered. "You think I want to harm Zhao Yu? You underestimate me too much. Although you and I are from different races, we are very similar in some aspects. This is also the reason why I chose you. Oh right, is the hidden god battle robe still useful? Yi Fei's expression changed. Shang Jiu, what do you mean? At Shang Jiu's level of strength, Yi Fei would not speak nonsense. Now that Shang Jiu had suddenly mentioned the invisible god battle robe, Yi Fei suddenly felt an inexplicable panic in his heart. Could it be that there's something wrong with the hidden god battle robe? Yi Fei's heart sank. Shang Jiu also quickly sensed the change in Yi Fei's mood. He sneered, "You're still too naive. Do you really think that a simple half-venerable artifact can conceal your human bloodline? You underestimate us adepts too much. Since I can become your memory, I can become the sorcerer god for others. However, I have a way to see through your soul. Therefore, in this world, the only thing that cannot be seen through by the sorcerer god is the witchcraft itself. Do you understand what I mean?" Yi Fei gasped. Of course, he understood what Shang Jiu meant. The only thing that could hide from the sorcerer god was the witchcraft itself. This was the same principle as how people could not see the darkness under the light when they were under the light. This was the darkness under the light. That is to say, this hidden god battle robe, besides being a half-venerable artifact, also hides some kind of hidden sorcerer technique that can hide from the sorcerer god and the eyes of the ancestral sorcerer. Yi Fei's expression was extremely ugly. Although he did not want to believe Shang Jiu's words, when he was stared at by the 12 ancestral sorcerers, he did feel that the hidden god battle robe had released an unusual power that allowed him to hide from the eyes of the ancestral sorcerer. Originally, Yi Fei thought that it was the power of the half-venerable artifact. However, after Shang Jiu's reminder, he was shocked to discover that the power was most likely some kind of strange witchcraft. However, this battle robe was given to me by Zhao Xinjian under the orders of the earthly venerable hidden god. The hidden god palace is also a hidden force of the human tribe. They are all humans, so how could they use witchcraft? Furthermore, it's a mysterious witchcraft that can even hide from the sorcerer god. Yi Fei's mood gradually sank. Shang Jiu's face was filled with a cold smile. Now, I'm just a part of your memory. You haven't seen earthly venerable hidden god, so I can't help you analyze why he would hide it from you. However, there's one thing I'm sure of. The function of this sorcery is not just to hide your spirit. The key point is that this witchcraft can also devour your soul, shatter it, and scatter it. Yi Fei's expression changed drastically. He looked coldly at Shang Jiu and said, "Do you think I'll believe what you're saying?" Shang Jiu shook his head. "I don't need you to believe me. I just want you to promise me that you'll avenge me and destroy the damned Heavenly Wind tribe for me. Promise me that you won't let the tragedy between me and little Yua repeat itself. Finally, I'll use the last of my strength to help you resolve the hidden dangers of the hidden god battle robe." Hearing this, Yi Fei had a vague feeling that something was wrong. However, before he could ask any more questions, Shang Jiu's body and his spirit sea suddenly burst into flames, forming a ball of burning sorcerer god's fire. It fiercely rushed toward the hidden god battle robe in Yi Fei's body. Roar! At this moment, Yi Fei was shocked to discover that an evil and terrifying roar was coming from within his hidden god battle robe. That sound seemed to come from the endless hell of time and space. Under the burning of Shang Jiu's sorcerer god's fire, it let out a painful and angry roar. However, this roar quickly disappeared. At the same time, the last memory that Shang Jiu had left in Yi Fei's mind also disappeared. Shang Jiu's last words rang in Yi Fei's ears. "I've resolved the hidden dangers of the hidden god battle robe. The weapon spirit in the battle robe has been demonized by someone and turned into a sorcerer spirit. You have to be careful. Also, thank you for allowing me to return to the sorcerer tribe. You have also allowed me to finally see the hope of revenge, the power of despair, the sovereign divine body, and the golden divine treasure that I left for you. Jinshi, my brother, I hope you'll like this generous gift that I've prepared for you. He. Shangjiu's voice became deeper and deeper. There was an indescribable madness and hatred in his voice. However, Yi Fei's heart was heavy. He could feel that Shangjiu was completely dead. Not only had he died in this world, but he had also died in his memories. Now, I can't even find a reason to refuse to avenge him. After all, Shangjiu used his life to save mine Zhao Shenjian, hidden god sovereign, who is trying to harm me. They went through so much trouble to send me into the lonely mountain ridge. What is their motive? Yi Fei's consciousness stood in the middle of the golden sea of consciousness. This was the final golden treasure that Shangjiu had left him. With this treasure, he would be able to smoothly cultivate to the sorcerer deity level without any bottlenecks. This was the same principle as the innate martial gods of the human tribe. As long as he cultivated, he would definitely become a martial god. This was the terrifying potential of an innate martial god. Chapter 1858. I didn't expect that Shangjiu would not only sacrifice himself for revenge, but also give me all his cultivation memories. Now I owe Shangjiu a huge favor. This favor can only be repaid with Jin Shi's head. Jin Shi was Shangjiu's half-brother, who was also the murderer of little Yu. In Shangjiu's memories, Yi Fei had seen with his own eyes how Jin Shi had stepped on little Yu Er's tombstone in an extremely humiliating manner. He had also made Shangjiu a slave and humiliated him. Such hatred, along with the inheritance of Shangjiu's memories, made Yi Fei's heart involuntarily produce an inexplicable murderous intent. Shangjiu, don't worry. I'll avenge you. Yi Fei thought silently in his heart, and his gaze became resolute. As he made up his mind, the cultivation memories that originally belonged to Shangjiu suddenly turned into a tide and merged perfectly with Yi Fei's memories. Yi Fei did not resist this time. After all, these were only Shangjiu's cultivation memories, and not his emotional memories. Even if he merged these memories, he would not become Shangjiu, but he would have all of Shangjiu's cultivation memories. It would be difficult for a warrior to do such a thing. However, Shangjiu was best at memorizing sorcery, so Yi Fei easily turned these memories into his own memories. When Yi Fei opened his eyes again, there was a hint of vicissitudes in his eyes. After merging these cultivation memories, it was as if he had cultivated for countless years on the path of a sorcerer. I see. The biggest difference between a sorcerer and a warrior is that they do not have to go through the tribulation. As long as the level of the divine treasure and sorcery reaches a certain level, a sorcerer can easily advance. This means that now that I have the golden divine treasure, as long as I want to, I can quickly break through the ranks of Grand Sorcerer, Sorcerer God, and become a martial god. Realm. After flipping through these memories, Yi Fei suddenly became excited. Ever since he found out that the hidden god battle robe had been tampered with, Yi Fei did not dare to have high expectations for the hidden god temple. He also did not dare to rely on the power of the hidden god Earth Venerable to save Zhao Yu. However, without the support of the hidden god temple, it would be extremely difficult for him to return to the impregnable pass of the human tribe, let alone save Zhao Yu. Yi Fei was also very worried at one time. However, after looking through Shangjiu's cultivation memories, Yi Fei no longer worry. After all, relying on someone else's powers in his own hands was more reliable. The 12-12-12-12 golden 12-12-12-12-12-12-12-12-12-12-12-12-12 s. After all, one's. It would allow Yi Fei to cultivate his sorcery in peace and break through to the rank of Grand Sorcerer in a year's time. However, to break through to the rank of Grand Sorcerer, there are two conditions that must be met. One is to cultivate the golden divine treasure, which is the foundation for breaking through to the rank of Grand Sorcerer. After all, the higher the level of the sorcery, the stronger the mental strength required. Sorcery is divided into 5 levels from weak to strong. They are the most basic, white and blue. Sorcery is divided into grand sorcery, green sorcery, silver sorcery, gold sorcery, and divine sorcery that can only be performed by sorcerer gods. Therefore, to break through to the rank of grand sorcerer, a sorcerer must not only cultivate divine treasures that are not lower than the gold divine treasure, but also master at least one gold-level sorcery to be called a grand sorcerer. I just don't know how many gold-level sorcery there are in Shangjiu's cultivation memories. Yi Fei was very curious. With a jolt of his mind, a mysterious sorcery appeared in his mind. A mysterious spell had automatically appeared in his mind. The name of this spell was very strange as well. It was actually called Battle Shaman. Moreover, in Shangjiu's memories, this was the only sorcery technique that he had left for Yi Fei. This made Yi Fei very surprised. I've heard of the body of the war demon and the body of the war god, but I've never heard of the body of the battle sorcerer. Don't all sorcerers use sorcery to battle? Don't tell me there are sorcerers who can fight in close quarters like warriors? Fight? Yi Fei could not help but have a strong interest in this body of the battle sorcerer. At the same time, he knew very well that since Shangjiu was bent on revenge, the sorcery that he had left for him would definitely be the strongest. Obviously, the memory sorcery was not Shangjiu's strongest sorcery. Shangjiu's strongest sorcery should be this body of the battle sorcerer. Body of the sorcerer. A golden vortex formed by an ancestral sorcerer's blessing could last for an entire month, and Yi Fei had received a total of 12 ancestral sorcerer's blessings. In other words, Yi Fei could now use a year to cultivate this body of the battle sorcerer. Not to mention, Yi Fei still had the undying sword soul in his body, which could infinitely increase his comprehension. In his mind, he still had Shangjiu's lifetime of cultivation experience, which could be used as a reference at any time to clear his doubts. No matter how difficult this body of the battle sorcerer was to understand, Yi Fei was shocked to discover that he had miraculously only used a short 3 months to completely comprehend this body of the battle sorcerer. It was only when he comprehended this sorcery that Yi Fei realized how crazy the sorcery that Shangjiu had left for him was. This was because this body of the battle sorcerer could actually be cultivated into the body of the ancestral sorcerer, and the ancestral sorcerer was an innate god-fiend. He was the strongest god that had appeared in the world when the world existed. Of course, unlike other innate god-fiends, it was said that the ancestral sorcerer's strongest point was his physical body. Even if the world was destroyed, the ancestral sorcerer's physical body would remain indestructible. It was a true body of eternal indestructible. The body of the battle sorcerer that Shangjiu had left behind was created to cultivate a physical body that was comparable to the ancestral sorcerer's. It was the strongest body tempering technique of the sorcerer tribe, and it even surpassed the body of the battle sorcerer. In the end, Yi Fei's body of the battle sorcerer could only cultivate his physical body to be comparable to a divine artifact. Even if he merged with the Azura divine body and cultivated the sovereign divine body of the human tribe's 10 great divine bodies, it would only allow him to break through to the sovereign realm. That was already the limit. However, the body of the battle sorcerer was different. In Yi Fei's opinion, this sorcery had already far surpassed the level of a god-level sorcery. It was even more crazy than the 8th-level heavenly dragon that Yi Fei had mastered. This body of the battle sorcerer has a total of 12 levels. When you master the first 3 levels, your physical body will be comparable to a divine artifact. At the 4th level, your physical body will be comparable to a half-venerable artifact. At the 5th level, you will be a real venerable artifact. Even a heavenly venerable would find it difficult to break through such a physical body. Could it be that Shangjiu actually intends to rely on the strength of his physical body alone? he is going to break through to become a heavenly venerable in the earth domain. When Yi Fei thought of this possibility and saw how crazy the body of the battle sorcerer was, he couldn't help but inwardly gasp. Besides feeling that Shang Jiu was too crazy, he was also shocked by the strength of the body of the battle sorcerer. Chapter 1859. To cultivate the body of the battle shaman, the most important thing is to fuse nomological laws. The more nomological laws you fuse, the stronger the body of the battle shaman. The first 3 levels are the easiest and are considered the most basic parts of the body of the battle shaman. You only need to fuse 1 nomological law to cultivate the first level. Fusing 3 nomological laws will allow you to cultivate the first 3 levels and allow your body to reach a level comparable to a divine artifact. The truly insane part is the 4th level. The number of nomological laws you need to fuse is actually 4. The 5th level, 5, 6, and so on. When you fuse the 12th level, you actually need a total of 12 nomological laws. Even Yi Fei's current strongest heavenly venerate technique only required 8 nomological laws to master. Even so, he was able to fool the 2 earthly venerates, man god and heaven god. Just the number of nomological laws required to cultivate the body of the battle shaman was enough to make Yi Fei feel dizzy and have the urge to vomit blood after carefully calculating it. In this world, heavenly venerate origins were extremely rare. Every time one comprehended a nomological law, they needed a heavenly venerate origin. Forget about several dozen laws, even the 8 laws required to master the 8 extreme heavenly dragon. Yi Fei was unable to gather all of them, let alone several dozen. But there was no other way. The body of the battle shaman was so tempting and insane. It was comparable to the body of an ancestral wizard. Just thinking about it made Yi Fei extremely excited. If he could cultivate it, he could challenge the dark heavenly venerable with just his body alone, let alone the heavenly tribulation of despair. Therefore, even though he knew that the body of the battle shaman was 100 times harder to cultivate than the 8-level heavenly dragon, Yi Fei still gritted his teeth and decided to cultivate it with tears in his eyes. Besides, other than this body of the battle shaman, he had no other sorcery to cultivate. He couldn't be like Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle, who ate spirit stones and went to sleep. Of course, Xiao Qiao hadn't slept yet. Seeing that Yi Fei was about to cultivate again, Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle, who understood how crazy Yi Fei was when he cultivated, hurriedly ate as many spiritual stones as they could. Otherwise, when Yi Fei cultivated to the state of selflessness, he would starve again. This was especially true for the dragon turtle. Ever since it had starved for half a year, the dragon turtle had learned a painful lesson. It would rather puff itself up into a ball than let go of a single spiritual stone. What should I do? Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle are both eating spirit stones. If I don't eat them, I won't fit in. Ling Siki was in a dilemma. After all, she was a human. She didn't have such good teeth like the dragon turtle and Xiao Qiao. However, if she didn't eat and just watched Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle eat, Ling Siki felt that it wasn't appropriate. Therefore, Ling Siki quickly thought of a way, which was to secretly take a few pieces and then silently start cultivating. At this moment, Yi Fei had no idea that another person seemed to have joined the ranks of his big spenders. It was just as Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle had expected. Once he entered the state of cultivation, Yi Fei was undoubtedly very crazy. Very soon, he completely entered a state of enlightenment where he forgot about everything around him and began cultivating according to the method of the battle shaman's constitution. Boom! An invisible sword pressure suddenly erupted from Yi Fei's body. It was the aura of the rule of sword, which was also the first rule that Yi Fei had comprehended. However, when this rule appeared, Yi Fei immediately activated his mind power and formed a strange golden vortex. This vortex was very similar to the vortex blessed by the ancestral shaman, but it was many times weaker. This was Yi Fei's current golden divine treasure. Moreover, the higher the level of the divine treasure, the more terrifying the mind power released. Originally, according to the records of the battle shaman's constitution, it would take half a year to cultivate the first level, even if one had the golden divine treasure. However, the mind power released by Yi Fei's golden divine treasure was too strong. Yi Fei was very surprised to discover that he had only used a little more than a month to completely integrate the rule of sword. Yi Fei was pleasantly surprised. That's great. I've mastered a total of 3 rules. If I continue cultivating at this speed, I might be able to cultivate the first 3 levels of the battle shaman's constitution before the ancestral shaman's blessing disappears. Then, I'll truly break through to the golden great shaman and possess battle prowess comparable to a martial god. Yi Fei was very excited. Even though he realized that the hidden god temple was not as trustworthy as Zhao Xinjian had said, Yi Fei still decided to follow the hidden god temple's arrangements and infiltrate the sorcerer tribe to assassinate the sorcerer tribe's relatives. However, this was no longer for the hidden god temple. It was for Zhao Yuan himself. After all, Zhao Yu was his woman. Yi Fei did not want to see his woman become a sacrifice for the sorcerer tribe's political marriage. Since the gods of heaven and earth were too guarded and could not take action in the divine temple to rescue Zhao Yu, the only thing Yi Fei could do was to follow the hidden god temple's arrangements and find an opportunity to assassinate the sorcerer tribe's relatives. The sorcerer tribe's relatives were all dead. It's easy to assassinate, but it's extremely difficult to get close to the target of the assassination. An ordinary sorcerer would definitely not stand a chance. At the very least, I have to become a golden great shaman. Only then will I be able to gain a firm foothold in the sorcerer tribe. Yi Fei's eyes flashed with determination. Seeing that the rule of sword had been successfully integrated, Yi Fei did not hesitate and quickly released his rule of lightning. This was a rule that the heaven and earth venerables had bestowed upon him. It was also a very powerful attack rule. When Yi Fei integrated this rule into the body of the battle wizard, he instantly felt that his body seemed to have undergone some kind of miraculous change. It was as if the hidden treasures in his body had suddenly been opened by the body of the battle wizard. Yi Fei's mentality moved instinctively. Suddenly, countless sharp swords appeared on the ground where he was standing silently. They were densely packed and filled with murderous intent. This is the sorcerer art that comes with the body of the battle wizard? Yi Fei's face was filled with surprise. Only now did he realize that as the body of the battle wizard improved and the integration of the rule of lightning, he seemed to naturally produce some special abilities. It was also this ability that allowed Yi Fei to make countless swords appear on the ground with just a thought. Therefore, when Yi Fei had cultivated the second level of the body of the battle wizard, with another thought, the swords around him all disappeared with a whoosh. Violently tumbling purple lightning suddenly appeared in the sky above his head. It was like a heavenly tribulation. It was very shocking. Yi Fei was overjoyed. He took advantage of his current state of cultivation and spent another few months hurriedly integrating the last rule that he had comprehended, the rule of slaughter, into his body in one go. Boom! An extremely terrifying murderous intent suddenly erupted around Yi Fei. Then, this murderous intent actually formed a scarlet blood sword that floated behind Yi Fei. It was as if this blood sword would automatically fly out and behead someone with just a thought from Yi Fei. Moreover, with the completion of the third level of the body of the battle wizard, Yi Fei's entire skin actually shone with a dazzling golden light from the inside out. The last ray of light was like a scorching sun that shattered the remaining golden vortexes that surrounded Yi Fei. Chapter 1860. Boom! As Yi Fei broke through to become a gold wizard, countless wizards in the ancestral wizard temple couldn't help but discuss in surprise. It's the junior wizard who was blessed by the 12 ancestral wizards a year ago. I didn't expect him to become a gold wizard in just a year. It's so frustrating to compare wizards. If I had the gold treasure and the blessings of the 12 ancestral wizards, I'd definitely be able to break through to become a gold wizard and achieve more glory than him. Glory? Haha, you probably don't know that Prince Jin Wu of the Tianfeng tribe hates him to the core. Even if he has the gold treasure, he'll never be a match for Prince Jin Wu as long as he doesn't break through to become a wizard god. Obviously, many things had happened in the ancestral wizard temple during the year when Yi Fei received the blessings of the ancestral wizards and broke through to become a senior wizard. The most eye-catching thing was the feud between Yi Fei and Jin Wu. After all, Yi Fei had triggered the blessings of the 12 ancestral wizards a year ago. He had unintentionally interrupted Jin Wu's blessings and ruined Jin Wu's plan to break through to become a gold wizard. If Yi Fei was a prince from a big tribe, Jin Wu might have tolerated it. However, Yi Fei was a refugee who didn't even have a tribe. This made Jin Wu extremely angry. At the same time, the news that Yi Fei had the gold treasure spread like wildfire. Many big tribes had their eyes on him. However, no one expected Yi Fei to break through so quickly. A year ago, it was said that this person wasn't even a bronze wizard. A year later, this person actually became a gold great wizard. As expected of the legendary gold divine treasure that only appears once every 100,000 years. If I can bring this person back, I can be considered to have made up for my mistake. When Yi Fei broke through to become a senior wizard and rushed into the starry sky to release his power, a middle-aged man in a golden robe was standing on a tall building in the ancestral wizard temple. If Yi Fei was here, he would definitely recognize that this middle-aged man was the Gongzhu Grand Wizard that he had met a year ago. A year ago, Great Sorcerer Gongzhu was ordered by Great Sorcerer Chen Liang to come to the lonely mountain range to search for the new human emperor who had escaped from the human tribe's impregnable pass. Sorcerer Gongzhu thought this was a sure thing, but what made him depressed was that no matter how many wizards he brought with him, they could not find the new emperor. Just as the great shaman was about to go back empty-handed to receive his punishment, news of the appearance of the golden god treasure suddenly spread out in the temple of the little shaman city. What made the great shaman ecstatic was that the one who had the golden god treasure was not the nobles of the big tribes, but just someone without any foundation. Homeless people. The great witch Gongzhu suddenly had an idea. He decided to take Yi Fei back and hand him over to Grand Magus Chen Liang. In this way, he could make up for his mistake of not being able to catch the new king. Although Gongzhu shaman was fast, there was someone who moved even faster than him. That person was naturally Jin Wu. Almost at the same time that Yi Fei left the ancestral sorcerer temple and rushed into the starry sky, Jin Wu, who had been waiting in the crowd for a long time, suddenly had a look of intense jealousy and killing intent on his face. Boom! Without any warning, Jin Wu made his move. He stepped into the sky and used a void technique that was very similar to the Great Void Step. Jin Wu stepped into the void and arrived in front of Yi Fei. He shouted in a deep voice, "Boy, do you still remember the enmity of the ancestral sorcerer temple a year ago? You're Jin Wu? What enmity do we have?" Yi Fei was baffled. Then, his eyes turned cold. Even if there was enmity, it was Jin Wu who owed a blood debt to the 100 human martial emperors. Even though a year had passed, Yi Fei could not forget the 100 human martial emperors who had been killed by Jin Wu like livestock. A year ago, I did not have the ability to save them. But a year later, I can kill Jin Wu and avenge them. Jin Wu die. Boom! The scene of the 100 martial emperors dying a year ago seemed to appear in front of Yi Fei's eyes again. Yi Fei's body was filled with killing intent. Strong mental energy fluctuations made him burn like the sun. Then, a blazing golden divine sword pierced through the void and slashed at Jin Woo. "You're just a refugee. How dare you attack me?" Jin Woo's eyes were also filled with killing intent. Then, it turned into intense greed. Suddenly, a terrifying mental energy field appeared around him. As Jin Woo grabbed with his hand, the entire void seemed to shrink rapidly. It was about to fall into Jin Woo's palm. In the void. At the same time, Jin Woo wanted to use this hand to grab Yi Fei's body. It was as if he wanted to pull out the golden treasure from Yi Fei's body and make it his own. Hand of the void. Jin Woo waved his hands and a blazing golden light burst out from his body. After a year, Jin Woo had broken through to become a gold great wizard even though his blessing had failed. Many of the spectating adepts were shocked by this development. A gold great wizard? Didn't Jin Woo fail in his blessing? How did he break through to become a gold great wizard so quickly? It's not possible under normal circumstances. However, I've heard of an evil sorcery that can transplant other people's divine treasures into one's own body. This sorcery is too evil and has been banned by the sorcerer god. Jin Woo dares to openly violate the sorcerer god's ban. It seems like the rumor is true. It's very likely that Jin Shi is about to break through to become a sorcerer god. The wizards around the starry sky were discussing animatedly. Hearing this, Yi Fei was shocked. Then, his eyes became extremely cold. So what if he's a sorcerer god? Even if he's a sorcerer god, I'll still kill him. Yi Fei's expression was resolute. Since he had already received great benefits from Shang Jiutian, he had to avenge Shang Jiutian and fulfill Shang Jiutian's final wish. Of course, before taking revenge on Jin Shi, as the human emperor, Yi Fei felt that it was even more necessary for him to avenge the 100 martial emperors who had died a year ago. As the human emperor, I will fight for the human tribe. I must kill this Jin Woo. Kill him! Yi Fei roared in his heart. However, his eyes were filled with coldness and merciless killing intent. Facing Jin Woo's hand of the void, Yi Fei activated his battle wizard body without hesitation. Instantly, Yi Fei's body began to emit endless divine light. It was as if his entire body had become a real divine artifact. Jin Woo's hand of the void grabbed Yi Fei's body. Not only did it fail to crush Yi Fei's body, but it was also forcefully repelled by an extremely strong spiritual pressure. Chapter 1861. Jin Woo was furious. The Grand Shaman of Gongzhou was shocked when he realized that Yi Fei had chosen the declining path of battle shaman with the golden treasure. It was extremely difficult to train one's physique in any race. In the sorcerer tribe, the path of a battle sorcerer was a path that only those small tribes with no resources would take. Normally, sorcerers with a little talent would choose the path of a spell sorcerer or a weapon sorcerer, which was easier to cultivate. Especially the latter two paths of shaman. Not only were they easier to train, but their attack power was at least 10 times stronger than that of battle shamans who only trained their physique. In the case of the same level, when battle shamans faced the other two paths of shaman, they could only passively take a beating. This was also the reason why Jin Woo was furious. Although he could use evil spells to seize Yi Fei's treasure and transplant it into his own body, he could not change the path of battle shaman that Yi Fei had already mastered. In this way, even if he seized the golden treasure, he would be forced to continue on Yi Fei's path. The path of battle shaman. Damned refugee, how dare you waste the golden treasure that I set my eyes on? You deserve to die. Die. Jin Woo roared. With a wave of his robe, he turned into a terrifying wild wolf king. He opened his huge mouth and suddenly swallowed Yi Fei and the space around him. He swallowed everything. Phantom Wolf. That's a spell that Grand Shaman Jin Woo created when he was young. It's extremely terrifying. It seems that young Master Jin Woo really wants to kill him. Sigh, that kid has no background but has the golden treasure. Even if young Master Jin Wu doesn't attack, the nobles of the other large tribes won't let him go. It's a pity that he's a battle shaman. Not only are the spells of this path few in number, but they're also very weak. It seems that there has never been a battle shaman who broke through to Sorcerer God, the surrounding shamans discussed animatedly. Even the Grand Shaman of Gongzhou shook his head secretly. Although the sorcerer gods had issued a joint order a long time ago to forbid the practice of evil spells and seizing other people's treasures, this was only an absolute restriction on the shamans of the small tribes. Among the nobles of the large tribes, seizing other people's high-level treasures to replace their own low-level treasures happened from time to time. However, it was the first time that Jin Wu had done something so public. When he was swallowed by the huge wolf, Yi Fei broke out in a cold sweat. After all, this was the first time he used witchcraft in a battle. He was a little worried about the strangeness of witchcraft. However, Yi Fei soon realized that his worries were unnecessary. Jin Wu's sorcery was indeed terrifying and could even devour the void. However, at the same time, it also had a fatal weakness, and that was that its range was too large. Even with the mental power of a gold wizard, it would be difficult for him to sustain it for too long. However, Jin Wu is indeed ruthless. He seems to have snatched the golden divine treasure of some senior gold-rank great magus. That's why he has an attack power that surpasses that of an ordinary gold-rank great magus. If the stalemate continues, even if my physical body is comparable to a divine weapon, I won't be able to hold on for too long. Crack! Just as Yi Fei was pondering, traces of cracks had already appeared on Yi Fei's battle wizard body due to the endless pressure from the wolf's mouth. At this moment, Jin Wu's figure also entered the void engulfed by the wolf's mouth. He looked down at Yi Fei from above like an ancestral wizard in a temple. He was filled with dignity and coldness as he stared at him. Refugee, don't resist. The more you resist, the faster you will die. Now, why don't you kneel down and give me your golden divine treasure? The gold god treasury, dig it out and give it to me. Even though he was furious that Yi Fei had chosen the path of the lowly battle wizard, a battle wizard who possessed a golden divine treasure still had a 50% chance of breaking through to the level of a sorcerer god. Jin Wu still didn't want to give up on the precious golden divine treasure in Yi Fei's body. As he spoke, Jin Wu's majestic mental power turned into a ghastly ghostly hand and ruthlessly dug at Yi Fei's body. Sorcery, skinning ghostly claw. Once, Shang Jiu had his senior magus skin peeled off by this move, and was severely injured. Shang Jiu's memories flashed before Yi Fei's eyes once again. It was the bloody scene of Shang Jiu fighting against a group of sorcerers in the tribe. Suddenly, Shang Jiu was attacked by his father and skinned alive by himself. A shocking look of viciousness suddenly flashed across Yi Fei's eyes. It was clear that even though Shang Jiu had died, Shang Jiu's hatred still remained in Yi Fei's heart. It was also this hatred that caused Yi Fei to develop a bloodthirsty and crazy aura from the bottom of his heart. Kill! Yi Fei suddenly let out a demonic roar. As he roared, a blood-red sword floated behind Yi Fei. With Yi Fei's anger and murderous intent, the blood sword automatically turned into a blood-red glow without anyone's control. It cut through the heavens and the earth, and also cut through the engulfing giant wolf's mouth in the void. How is this possible? At the same level, battle sorcerers should be the weakest among the three major factions. What kind of blood sword is that? How can you destroy my sorcery? Die! Jin Wu was furious. As the void shattered, his terrifying ghostly hand continued to grab Yi Fei's head as if he wanted to crush Yi Fei. His head was going to dig out Yi Fei's golden treasure. Die! Yi Fei's eyes were bloodshot. As he raged, his blazing spirit sea suddenly churned with dazzling golden waves. The blood sword that was flying out was suddenly caught by Yi Fei. He was not good at sorcery, but in terms of combat and swordsmanship, Yi Fei was not afraid of any opponent at the same level. Hence, under the incredulous gazes of the sorcerers and grand sorcerers, Yi Fei raised the blood-red sword and slashed forward. A bloody sword of slaughter appeared between the heavens and the earth. This sword cut through the ghostly hand and shattered the void. Finally, Yi Fei let out another roar. He held the blood sword and traversed countless voids with a single step. The violent, murderous intent formed a terrifying bloody storm. In an instant it completely engulfed Jin Wu's body. No, the void technique. How can you know the void technique? Jin Wu widened his eyes in horror. He suddenly regretted provoking Yi Fei. What made him even more terrified was that Yi Fei was clearly a refugee, but he had mastered the secret void technique, which only the nobles of the Heavenly Wind tribe could master. This secret technique caught Jin Wu off guard. He could only watch helplessly as the blood sword pierced through his forehead and into the back of his head. Boom! The moment the blood sword pierced through Jin Wu's head, Jin Wu's golden treasure was completely destroyed. Sorcerers did not have souls, only their minds. Once the treasure that represented their minds was destroyed, Jin Wu would become a corpse. Chapter 1862. There were strong and weak golden sorcerers as well. The more golden sorcery they mastered, the stronger the golden sorcerer would be. It was the same principle as a warrior who could perform multiple primordial celestial skills was definitely stronger than a warrior who could only perform one primordial celestial skill in the same realm. For example, Yi Fei and Jin Wu were newly promoted golden sorcerers. They only mastered one golden sorcery. Jin Wu's golden sorcery was the skinning ghost claw, while Yi Fei's was the blood sword floating behind him. They were at the bottom of the golden sorcerers. As for the Gongju sorcerer, he was a powerful sorcerer who had mastered multiple golden sorcery. According to Shangjiu's cultivation memory, once a sorcerer mastered 12 golden sorcery, that sorcerer would be able to open the supreme door and step into the sorcerer realm. However, it was easy to cultivate one sorcery art, but it was extremely difficult to cultivate 12 golden sorcery arts. Many golden sorcerers could only cultivate one golden sorcery art in their entire lives, and that was the limit. Only those great sorcerers with great aptitude and powerful divine treasures could master more than one golden sorcery art. Such sorcerers were absolute experts in the sorcerer tribe. Their strength was comparable to a middle martial god or even an upper martial god of the human tribe. Yi Fei was shocked to find that the Gongju sorcerer was a powerful sorcerer who was comparable to a middle martial god through the observation of his spiritual energy. He was shocked. The sorcerer tribe really thinks highly of me. I'm only at the demigod realm, and the sorcerer tribe sent a middle martial god to kill me, the human emperor. However, it seems that the Gongju sorcerer didn't discover my human tribe identity. They looked at each other. The Gongju sorcerer didn't show any hostility. Instead, he nodded his head in a friendly manner. Yi Fei was relieved. He knew that although the Hidden God Temple had tampered with the Hidden God Battle Robe, they hadn't lied to him. The Hidden God Battle Robe could hide his identity perfectly. This kind of concealment was not as simple as making Yi Fei's divine soul disappear. Even Yi Fei's aura was completely changed. Therefore, even though Grand Shaman Gongju knew that Yi Fei was right in front of him, he could not see through him. Yi Fei was the new human sovereign that he could not find even if he dug 3 feet into the ground. On the contrary, when he saw that Yi Fei could kill Jin Wu as a battle sorcerer, the Gongju sorcerer sect, he was shocked. He exclaimed, "Battle sorcerer sect has such combat strength. Young master is dead, Jin Wu is dead. The sorcerer golden sorcerer. Sorcerer, 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 ye sorcerer, had sorcerer sores, sorcerer, 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 were sorcerer, 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 gold, were soral, sorcerer, sorcerer, was sorcerer, age, sorcerers, sorial. In particular, there was an old gold grand wizard among them. He was Jin Wu's servant and was equivalent to the guardian of the divine son of the divine palace. When he saw that Jin Wu had died in battle, this gold great sorcerer had already roared and wanted to rush into the starry sky from the shrine to fight Yi Fei to the death. However, when he heard Yi Fei say his name, this gold great sorcerer was so scared that he almost went crazy on the spot. He didn't even care about the dignity of a grand magus. He just crazily ran out of the ancestral Magus Temple and Little Magus City, as if he had encountered some great terror. Yi Fei certainly knew the reason why the great shaman was so scared. After all, Shang Jiu had killed so many people in the Heavenly Wind tribe that their blood flowed like a river. Almost all the gold great shamans of the older generation had been killed. In the end, Jin Shi had paid a huge price to invite reinforcements from other tribes. Jin Shi's father had even launched a sneak attack on Shang Jiu and forcefully stripped Shang Jiu of his grand magus gold skin, causing Shang Jiu to be severely injured. The current Heavenly Wind tribe would not exist at all. Since then, Shang Jiu had become the biggest taboo of the Heavenly Wind tribe, and also the source of the fear of the older generation of Grand Magi. Of course, it was also Yi Fei's intention to reveal Shang Jiu's name. After all, Jin Wu was a great noble of the Heavenly Wind tribe. Yi Fei, a mere refugee, had killed Jin Wu, which was too shocking. The matter of the golden divine treasure would definitely alarm countless grand magi and even sorcerer gods. Instead of making up stories and giving himself away, he might as well reveal it directly. Revealing Shang Jiu's name also saved him a lot of trouble. Shang Jiu, you are the witch demon Shang Jiu. I'm Gong Zhu, I've heard a lot about Brother Shang. Hearing Yi Fei reveal his identity, and seeing the terrified reaction of the Heavenly Wind tribe when they heard Shang Jiu's name. With Gong Zhu's identity and status as a Grand Magus, it was easy for him to find out all the grievances between Shang Jiu and the Heavenly Wind tribe. The last trace of doubt in Gong Zhu's heart disappeared like smoke. He immediately rushed into the starry sky with ecstasy and started chatting with Yi Fei. Yi Fei didn't reject Gong Zhu's invitation to befriend him and kill Jin Wu. It was just that he couldn't stand Jin Wu's disregard for human life and wanted to take revenge on the Heavenly Wind tribe for Shang Jiu. However, Yi Fei didn't forget his real purpose in coming to the sorcerer tribe, which was to destroy the peace marriage between the divine realm and the sorcerer tribe. In order to destroy this peace marriage, he had to get in touch with those Grand Magi who had power and status. Gong Zhu, the Grand Magus in front of him, was definitely the best way to break through. Yi Fei smiled and said, "Oh, it's the Grand Magus of Gong Zhu. Sorry for the disrespect." "Oh, Brother Shang, you also know Gong Zhu? That's great. I won't say more. Now that Brother Shang has killed Jin Wu, you have completely offended Jin Shi. Brother Shang, I'm afraid you don't know that Jin Shi has at most 100 years to break through to the sorcerer god level. It's just a rumor to confuse the opponent." As Gong Zhu spoke, his eyes were fixed on Yi Fei's expression. Yi Fei didn't hide his shock. He then nodded and thanked Gong Zhu with a cold face. "Thank you for telling me, Grand Magus Gong. However, even if Jin Shi breaks through to the sorcerer god level, I will still kill him." Gong Zhu smiled and said, "Brother Shang, you don't have to rush to take revenge. You have the golden treasure and it's only a matter of time before you break through to the sorcerer god level. To be honest, I never thought that a battle sorcerer could have such terrifying combat power. The blood sword you formed was even more shocking. If you don't mind, I am willing to recommend you. You can go and meet the Grand Magus Chen Liang. Like you, the Grand Magus Chen Liang was a refugee. I believe that the Grand Magus Chen Liang will be very happy to see you." The Grand Magus Qin Liang was the sorcerer tribe's title for the sorcerer god. Chapter 1863. Brother Shang, look, that's the Golden Palace where great Venerable Qin Liang lives. According to the rules of the Lonely Mountain Ridge, once you become a Gold Great Wizard, you can enter the Golden Palace and receive personal guidance from the Lord. Great Wizard Gongzhu said excitedly. The Lord was another form of respect for the Wizard God. However, only those who were close to the Wizard God could use this form of address. The great wizard Gongzhu's sudden words were telling Yi Fei about his close relationship with the wizard god Qin Liang. It's a pity that I was ordered to capture the new human emperor who escaped from the human tribe's impregnable pass, but I couldn't find him. I guess the new human emperor is probably hiding in the starry sky and doesn't dare to come out. The great wizard Gongzhu was depressed every time he thought of this. Yi Fei's expression became very strange. He then pretended to be joking and said, "That's easy. Great Wizard Gongzhu, I'm actually the new human emperor. Why don't you tie me up and hand me over? The great wizard Qin Liang will be very happy." The great wizard Gongzhu was stunned for a moment. Then, he laughed and said, "What? You're the new human emperor? Brother Shang, if you're the new human emperor, I'll take my head off and let you sit on it." Yi Fei said seriously, "I'm really the new human emperor. Ha, I can't. Brother Shang, I didn't expect you to be so humorous even though you look so honest. However, we can only say this to ourselves. We can't be negligent in front of the great wizard. Come with me." The great wizard Gongzhu refused to believe Yi Fei's words. Although the great wizard Gongzhu felt that Yi Fei looked a little similar to the new human emperor, the effect of the invisible god battle robe was really powerful. Even though Yi Fei was standing in front of the great wizard Gongzhu, he still didn't reveal any flaws. This gave Yi Fei the courage to run directly to meet the wizard god Qin Liang. Just like in the human battlefield, those who had broken through to the earthly venerable rank could establish divine palaces. In Lonely Ridge, any wizard who had become a wizard god could establish their own golden palace and recruit all kinds of great wizards and wizards to work for them. Usually, the more golden wizards who joined the golden palace, the more proof that the wizard god had the higher one's strength and status, the higher one's status. To Yi Fei's surprise, Grand Venerable Qin Liang, who was famous in the Lonely Mountain Range, was not only in a remote location, but the number of gold magi that Yi Fei sensed with his psychic power was also less than half the number of gold magi in other palaces. Senior Magus Gongzhu saw the confusion in Yi Fei's heart and explained in a low voice, "Senior Magus Qin Liang is different from the other senior magi. The other senior magi are all from noble clans." Grand Sovereign Qin Liang was the only Grand Sovereign who was a refugee without any foundation. Therefore, Grand Sovereign Qin Liang only accepted Grand Magi who were of the same status as him. Join the Golden Palace. Furthermore, Brother Shang, you came at the right time. Our Lonely Mountain Ridge just so happens to have a major event that is about to happen. Wait a moment, I'll report this to the Great Senior. While speaking, Great Shaman Gongzhu had already led Yi Fei to the steps of the Golden Palace. Above the steps, there was a magnificent palace made entirely of gold, which was the residence of Great Sage Qin Liang. Along the way, Yi Fei saw a total of 10 such palaces. 2 of them. This meant that there were as many as 12 sorcerer celestials in the Lonely Mountain Ridge. This wasn't good news for the human tribe. Just as Yi Fei was sizing up the Golden Palace, Great Shaman Gongzhu had already walked out of the palace excitedly. "Brother Shang, the Grand Sovereign invites you in. Thank you for your trouble." Yi Fei cupped his hands and followed behind Great Shaman Gongzhu. Along the way, he discovered many tyrannical mind energies sweeping over. The owners of these mind energies were all gold sorcerers who cultivated in Great Sage Qin Liang's Golden Palace. Some of them had wings on their backs, while others were covered in mysterious sorcerer runes. Some of them reared brutal ancient desolate beasts in captivity, while others even transformed their bodies into iron men, gold men, and other forms. Yi Fei knew that the different forms of sorcerers represented the different paths they walked. For example, sorcerers communicated with heaven and earth. They were existences similar to sorcerers. Their bodies were not strong, but they could easily borrow the power of the laws of heaven and earth to increase the power of their sorcerer spells by tenfold or even tenfold. There were also weapon sorcerers who could refine all kinds of powerful sorcerer weapons, puppets, mechanical puppets, and even corpse puppet armies. There were also evil weapon sorcerers who could summon ghosts, vengeful spirits, demons, and other servants to fight for them. For example, Zhu Yang, whom Yi Fei had encountered in the northern region, was a terrifying weapon sorcerer. He could gather earth into sand and summon sand demon puppets. He could even transform his body into a monster's and was very difficult to kill. On the other hand, Yi Fei's battle sorcerer path was ordinary. He did not have sorcerers who could mobilize the power of heaven and earth to increase the power of his sorcerer spells. He also did not have the means to refine puppets and form an army. At most, he was a meat shield with rough skin and thick flesh. He did not have much attack power. Therefore, unless they had no other choice, very few sorcerers would choose to walk the path of battle sorcerer. When he heard that great sorcerer Gong Zhu had brought back a battle sorcerer, and a battle sorcerer who had a gold treasure, even great sorcerer Chen Liang was stunned. On the throne, a pair of deep eyes immediately stared at Yi Fei. His eyes were fixed on Yi Fei. "You are not Shang Jiu. Shang Jiu and Jin Shi are brothers. They had already broken through to become gold sorcerers 10,000 years ago. However, you have just broken through to become a gold sorcerer. Even if you are reincarnated, your cultivation speed is too slow." On the throne, the golden light that filled the sky dissipated. It was an ordinary-looking old man. Great sorcerer Chen Liang had become a sorcerer god because he was a refugee. He was undoubtedly a legend of the sorcerer tribe. Such a person would not easily believe Yi Fei's identity just because of a few words from Yi Fei. However, since Yi Fei dared to come, of course, he was fully prepared. He did not deny it at once. Instead, he nodded frankly and said, "Yes, I am not the real Shang Jiu. The real Shang Jiu has died in this world, but he still lives in my memory." Immediately, Yi Fei briefly told him about Shang Jiu's unprecedented memory sorcery. He also told him about how he had merged with Shang Jiu's memory in the sorcerer world. When he heard that Shang Jiu could create a new memory sorcery when he was only a senior sorcerer, and could perfectly pass on his hatred and gold treasure to Yi Fei through his memory, even great sorcerer Chen Liang, the legendary sorcerer god, could not help but stand up from the throne in shock. "This is too amazing. This is too great. If this Shang Jiu can become a sorcerer god, he will definitely achieve something unprecedented in the lonely mountain ridge." Yi Fei smiled and said, "Great sorcerer, the former Shang Jiu is dead, but the current Shang Jiu is still alive. Perhaps I can break through to become a sorcerer god and achieve something that will surpass all the other sorcerer gods." Great sorcerer Gongzhu was startled. He secretly clicked his tongue and said, "Brother Shang looks honest, but I didn't expect him to talk so crazily. Did I recommend the wrong person?" Great sorcerer Gongzhu began to feel uneasy. He hurriedly stole a glance at great sorcerer Chen Liang. Great sorcerer Chen Liang looked at Yi Fei expressionlessly. He nodded, then shook his head. Suddenly, without saying anything, he reached out a large hand and slowly grabbed Yi Fei. Chapter 1864. Yi Fei remained calm. Even if he panicked, it would be useless. After all, he was facing a sorcerer god. Even if he unleashed his full strength, he wouldn't be a match for the sorcerer god. Since there was no point in panicking, what was there to be afraid of? He might as well show his strength boldly. Sword, come! Yi Fei bellowed. His eyes shone with a sword-like sharpness. The majestic mind power in his golden divine treasure transformed into a huge golden divine sword. It suddenly rushed out of Yi Fei's body and slashed at Grand Monarch Qin Liang's palm. Golden divine sword? Is this the ability you obtained? It's not bad, but it's a pity that it's still far from a superior sorcerer technique. Grand Monarch Qin Liang shook his head. His palms suddenly turned to stone. Then, two petrified fingers clamped Yi Fei's golden divine sword between his fingers. It broke into two halves between his fingers. Yi Fei was shocked. Although he knew that those who could become supremes were the most powerful beings in this world, Grand Monarch Qin Liang's terrifying strength made him deeply understand how terrifying the sorcerer god's strength was. The sorcerer god was at least 2 to 3 times weaker than a human earthly venerable who was also a supremacy. On the other hand, the true battle strength of a heavenly god and a human god was several times stronger than Grand Monarch Qin Liang. Yi Fei immediately felt a huge pressure in his heart. At the same time, this pressure immediately turned into intense anger. Rumble! The entire Golden Palace suddenly rumbled with thunder. Countless purple thunderbolts erupted wildly with Yi Fei as the center. Instantly, Grand Monarch Qin Liang's body seemed to have sunk into a terrifying sea of thunderbolt. The roaring thunderbolts made the expressions of Grand Monarch Gongzhu, who was watching the battle from the side, change drastically. This thunderbolt is infinitely close to a gold-grade sorcerer technique. It's still too weak. Grand Monarch Qin Liang smiled coldly. He just casually slapped his palm. At this moment, his entire palm had turned to stone. It was like a huge millstone of heaven and earth that crashed into the thunderbolt. The purple thunderbolt that Yi Fei had condensed exploded and no longer existed. Kill. However, just as the lightning exploded, Yi Fei's eyes suddenly flashed with a terrifying blood-red killing intent. The entire Roland's Golden Palace seemed to be dyed with a layer of bloody killing intent. Then, Yi Fei grabbed a scarlet mountain of blood swords and slashed it at Grand Monarch Qin Liang's petrified hand that was as large as a millstone. Good timing. This sword strike is quite interesting. Supreme Sovereign Qin Liang suddenly laughed. His huge palm grew even larger. Even space seemed to be petrified and completely solidified wherever it passed. When Yi Fei's sword was halfway through its slash, he was shocked to discover that his bloody sword mountain had turned into an extremely heavy stone mountain. It was as if it was going to crush him completely under the bloody sword mountain. In Yi Fei's heart, a strong sense of anger and fighting spirit flashed across his mind. I'm a demigod. I can't defeat a divine realm expert. But I'm a grand sorcerer. How can I not defeat Qin Liang? Stone sword, slash. Boom. Following Yi Fei's anger, a terrifying force suddenly erupted from his body. It allowed him to raise the petrified sword mountain and smash it at Grand Monarch Qin Liang's body. Grand Monarch Qin Liang's expression changed. Clearly, he had not expected Yi Fei's physical strength to be so terrifying. He actually raised the petrified giant sword and smashed it back at Grand Monarch Qin Liang. This was no longer a sorcerer's attack. It was clearly a warrior's attack. Under Grand Monarch Qin Liang's pressure, Yi Fei could not help but reveal some of his warrior habits. Fortunately, he was a battle sorcerer. Battle sorcerers had always been known for their strong physical bodies and were the best cannon fodder for the sorcerer race. Therefore, Yi Fei did not have to worry about exposing his identity as a warrior by raising the mountain of stone swords. On the contrary, Yi Fei's sudden attack had an unexpected effect. When Yi Fei furiously swung the mountain of stone swords at Grand Monarch Qin Liang, he heard a loud boom. Grand Monarch Qin Liang's body was sent flying by Yi Fei's attack like a stone. Oh my god, this kid actually sent a supreme martial artist flying. Grand Sorcerer Gongzhu's eyes were so wide that 2 rays of dazzling golden light shot out of them. Yi Fei was so frightened that he even wanted to turn around and run for his life. After all, he really did not mean to send Grand Monarch Qin Liang flying. If he angered the Grand Monarch, not only would his plan to sabotage the marriage be ruined, but he might not even be able to walk out of the Roland's palace alive. Grand Monarch Qin Liang, are you all right? I really didn't do it on purpose. Yi Fei had a worried look on his face. At this moment, Grand Monarch Qin Liang's face was twitching as he stood up furiously from his divine throne. He had not expected that a moment of carelessness would cause him to be sent flying by Yi Fei's stone sword. This scene happened to be witnessed by Grand Sorcerer Gongzhu's subordinate. However, Grand Monarch Qin Liang did not flare up. Instead, he stared thoughtfully at the stone sword that Yi Fei had thrown down and said, "I see. We sorcerers can also walk the path of martial arts. It's just that the power we use is different. The so-called battle sorcerers are sorcerers who fight with martial arts." What? Fight with martial arts? Grand Sorcerer Gongzhu was shocked. This completely overturned his understanding of sorcerers. Yi Fei also looked at Grand Monarch Qin Liang nervously. He was afraid that Grand Monarch Qin Liang would notice something amiss with his actions. If that happened, he would have nowhere to run. Grand Monarch Qin Liang also stared seriously at Yi Fei and asked in a low voice, "Was it Shangju's memory that made you choose the battle sorcerer sect?" Yi Fei could only brace himself and say, "That's right. Shangju's most powerful battle sorcerer sect is battle sorcerer. He's actually a battle sorcerer. Since battle sorcerers are so powerful and can use martial arts like warriors, why are all the other battle sorcerers I've seen so weak? Apart from being able to act as meat shields, I can't see any other strong points." Grand Sorcerer Gongzhu was shocked. Grand Monarch Qin Liang took a deep look at Yi Fei and did not answer his question. Instead, he shook his head and said, "There's still a big difference between battle sorcerers and warriors. Warriors have powerful martial arts techniques that are based on their mind power and divine treasures, while battle sorcerers cultivate battle techniques that are based on their mind power and divine treasures. I finally understand why grand monarchs like us are no match for earthly venerables of the human race." Grand Monarch Qin Liang's tone was so low that even Yi Fei and Grand Sorcerer Gongzhu could not hear him clearly. Chapter 1865. Supreme Venerable Qin Liang stared coldly at Yi Fei and said, "Why? Is it unfair for you to become my disciple? Although you have Shangjiu's memories, you are not the real Shangjiu. No one in the sorcerer tribe has ever broken through to become a supreme venerable. Now you have 2 choices. I will train you to become a sorcerer god. You can choose not to be my disciple, and I will let you cultivate in the Golden Palace." Seeing Supreme Venerable Qin Liang's generosity, the first to be moved was not Yi Fei, but the great sorcerer Gongzhu. The great sorcerer Gongzhu wiped his tears excitedly and almost choked with sobs. As expected of Supreme Venerable Qin Liang. "What are you waiting for, Brother Shang? What are you waiting for? You can't disappoint the great sage." Yi Fei struggled. He was not a sorcerer tribe member. If he suddenly became Supreme Venerable Qin Liang's disciple, wouldn't they turn against each other and kill each other when they met during the Great War of the Sorcerer Tribe? However, if he didn't agree to Qin Liang's request, Yi Fei would never believe that Qin Liang would be so magnanimous as to let go of an opponent who had a high chance of breaking through to the Supreme Magus realm, no matter how magnanimous Qin Liang seemed. After experiencing the repeated schemes of the Divine God, the Human God, and the Hidden God, he had to take the risk to grow. There are only 2 possibilities in this situation. Either I am really selfless and wholeheartedly want to strengthen the refugee sorcerers, or this is a test by Supreme Venerable Qin Liang. If it's the former, it's fine. If it's the latter. Yi Fei's heart suddenly shuddered. If it was the latter, it meant that Supreme Venerable Chen Liang was too shrewd. It would be fine if he agreed, but if he didn't, he might not even be able to see the sun tomorrow, let alone become a sorcerer god. Understanding this, Yi Fei finally made up his mind. He asked in a low voice, "Supreme Venerable, what benefits can I get if I become your disciple?" "Brother Shang, what nonsense are you talking about? It's such a great honor to be your disciple. How can you ask for benefits?" Gongzhu Great Shaman was shocked. He seriously doubted whether Yi Fei was blinded by money. He even dared to say such crazy words. If it had been any other magus asking for benefits like this, the other sorcerer gods would have slapped them to death without a second thought. Supreme Venerable Chen Liang didn't expect Yi Fei to ask for benefits before becoming a disciple. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Then, Supreme Venerable Chen Liang thought again. As if realizing something, his expression became even more amiable. "Well, since you've become my disciple, as your teacher, I can't be too stingy. I happen to have a gold-grade battle shaman art here. Take it and cultivate." Grand Sovereign Chen Liang extended a finger again, and suddenly tapped Yi Fei's forehead. Yi Fei did not resist this time. Instead, he allowed the stone finger to touch his forehead. Then, a powerful sorcery spell appeared in his mind. Battle Shaman, perish the gods? This was a battle technique that only battle shamans could use. Yi Fei couldn't help but stare at Supreme Venerable Chen Liang in shock. He could tell that Supreme Venerable Chen Liang was a sorcerer. How could he have a battle technique of the battle shaman sect? As if he understood Yi Fei's doubts, Supreme Venerable Chen Liang said coldly, "Very few people in our sorcerer tribe cultivate the battle shaman art. However, it's not that there aren't any. I obtained this perish the god battle technique by chance in an ancient ruin. Unfortunately, I'm a sorcerer, so I haven't been able to cultivate this battle technique. I hope that you can bring it to greater heights. Alright, you can leave now. Gongzhu, you stay and tell me about the new human emperor." Just like that, before Yi Fei could say anything, Supreme Venerable Chen Liang had already treated Yi Fei as his disciple. This attracted a look of extreme envy from Gongzhu Great Shaman. One had to know that he was Supreme Venerable Chen Liang's confidant, but even he didn't have the chance to become the sorcerer god's disciple. However, as soon as Yi Fei arrived, Supreme Venerable Chen Liang rushed to take him as his disciple. How could Gongzhu Great Shaman not be envious? It's really infuriating to compare great shamans. However, Brother Shang has the golden divine treasure. Strictly speaking, this kid can't be considered the real Shang Jiu. Gongzhu Great Shaman muttered as he stared at Yi Fei's back. Supreme Venerable Chen Liang was expressionless as he stared at Yi Fei's back. Suddenly, an undetectable coldness flashed through his eyes. Then, he withdrew his gaze and glanced at Gongzhu Great Shaman. "Gongzhu, have you done what I asked you to do?" Gongzhu Great Shaman's face turned pale. He knew that what was coming had finally come. Fortunately, he had been prepared. He had brought back Yi Fei, who had the golden divine treasure, and reported the good news first before reporting the bad news. "Forgive me, Supreme Venerable. That new human emperor is too cunning. I couldn't find any clues about the new human emperor even after digging 3 feet into the ground of the lonely mountain ridge. Could it be false information from the human race? Do you think the divine realm is a fool? This is a crucial moment in our cooperation. If he dares to lie to me, it won't do him any good. The new human emperor must be hiding somewhere in the lonely mountain ridge. We must find him." Supreme Venerable Chen Liang's expression grew colder. Although it was rumored that the new human emperor was only an insignificant demigod, as a shaman god, Chen Liang's intuition told him that leaving the new human emperor alone would be a very dangerous thing to do. Great Shaman Gongzhu immediately understood and knelt down. Don't worry, Supreme Venerable. I will gather the other shamans of the Golden Palace and rush to the lonely mountain ridge together. This time, we will find the new human emperor and kill him even if we have to turn the universe upside down. No, leave the matter of the new human emperor to the others. Gongzhu, you are most familiar with Shangjiu. From now on, you will be in charge of monitoring Shangjiu. You must record his every word and action and report to me at any time. Supreme Venerable Chen Liang's tone suddenly became indifferent. Although he had forcibly taken Yi Fei as his disciple, his tone didn't seem to have any intention of treating Yi Fei as his disciple. Great Shaman Gongzhu's expression changed drastically. He suddenly felt that Supreme Venerable Chen Liang had become an unprecedented stranger. However, as a great shaman of the Golden Palace, Gongzhu was undoubtedly a smart person. He knew what to ask and what not to ask, so he respectfully retreated and said, "Supreme Venerable, I know what to do. Work hard. Perhaps I will hand over the Golden Palace to you in the future. Also, when Shangjiu has mastered the battle technique, take him to the dark underworld hall." Supreme Venerable Chen Liang ordered coldly. Obviously, Chen Liang wasn't as kind and harmless as he seemed on the surface, as he had been able to grow from a refugee shaman with no background to the current supreme shaman. Great Shaman Gongzhu's heart trembled once again. He was both shocked by Supreme Venerable Chen Liang's order and overjoyed by his hint. "Brother Shangjiu, for the sake of Supreme Venerable and my future, it seems that I have to wrong you." Great Shaman Gongzhu's eyes flashed vaguely with an ominous glint before he retreated respectfully. After retreating, Great Shaman Gongzhu's expression returned to normal and he became even more enthusiastic towards Yi Fei. Chapter 1866. Shaman Gongzhu was very enthusiastic. Before Yi Fei could refuse, he dragged Yi Fei to his palace for a drink. At the same time, the news that Yi Fei had become the disciple of Supreme Venerable Chen Liang spread like wildfire. Many shamans in the Golden Palace were secretly envious and shocked. No wonder he's a genius with a golden treasure. He became the disciple of Supreme Venerable Chen Liang as soon as he joined the Golden Palace. This is the saying, comparing shamans to shamans. It's so hateful that Gongzhu took the chance to curry favor with young master. The shamans in the Golden Palace were very angry that Gongzhu only invited Yi Fei to drink with him. It was obvious that he wanted to establish a one-way connection with Yi Fei. Yi Fei also felt that Gongzhu was too enthusiastic. Not only did he invite him to drink, but he also wanted to eat with him and sleep with him on the same bed. After sternly rejecting the rude request of the great shaman of Gongzhu, the great shaman of Gongzhu slapped his forehead and suddenly put down the huge bowl. He said loudly with the smell of alcohol, "Brother Shang, you and I feel like old friends at first sight, and we are both in the same Golden Palace. Why don't we become sworn brothers? We'll help each other in the future. We can take care of each other." "What? You want to become sworn brothers?" Yi Fei's face turned green. He was very depressed that Supreme Venerable Chen Liang had forcibly taken him as his disciple. Now Gongzhu even wanted to become sworn brothers with him. Even if he wanted to win people over, wasn't he too enthusiastic? However, Yi Fei didn't have any hesitation this time. If he wanted to destroy the marriage between the shaman tribe and Supreme Venerable Chen Liang, he had to enter the upper echelons of the shaman tribe. Even the identity of Supreme Venerable Chen Liang's disciple was not enough. He had to be familiar with the upper echelons of the shaman tribe and get more information. And this overly enthusiastic senior magus in front of Ji Hao was obviously a very good breakthrough point. Most importantly, although Senior Magus Gong had a brain, he was obviously a big mouth and liked to talk about everything. Without a doubt, he was the best breakthrough point for Ji Hao to get information. Immediately, Yi Fei didn't refuse. Instead, he sincerely raised his bowl and said, Thank you, Brother Gongju, for thinking so highly of me. I won't refuse. Haha, Brother Shang, from now on we're brothers. Come, let's toast to our brotherhood. Gongju was overjoyed. He had been worried about not having a chance to keep an eye on Yi Fei. Now that they had become brothers, he had a reason to stay by Yi Fei's side and keep an eye on Yi Fei's every move. If possible, for the sake of his future, Gongju would even sleep with Yi Fei. Of course, if Gongju really dared to do that, even if they were brothers, Yi Fei would definitely beat Gongju to death on the spot. Not to mention, even though both sides had sworn brotherhood, there was no sincerity in it. Yi Fei did not mention burning yellow paper, and Gongju did not mention spitting blood. This kind of oath was not very convincing. But strangely, Yi Fei seemed to have overlooked this point, and the great shaman also seemed to have forgotten this point. After drinking wine with each other and calling each other brothers, the great shaman obviously became more enthusiastic. He hooked his arm around Yi Fei's shoulder and said in a low voice, "Little Nine, we are like-minded and become brothers. Since we're brothers, we can share our secret. How about this? I'll tell you a secret, and you'll tell me a secret. Let's exchange secret. What do you think?" "Oh, I wonder what secret brother wants to tell me." Yi Fei remained calm and asked in a low voice. He looked very interested. Perhaps because he was drunk, Gongju's face was red, and his breath reeked of alcohol. He looked around and said, "Little Jiu, do you know why Grandmaster was so anxious to accept you as his disciple? Oh, is there any mystery in it? Elder brother, please tell me." Yi Fei revealed a simple and honest smile. This kind of smile was very contagious. At the very least, Grand Shaman Gongju was infected by it. He sighed inwardly. This kid is a rare honest person. Unfortunately, he's too honest. He even dared to send a great senior flying, which angered the great senior and ruined his own future for no reason. If I don't take this as a warning, I'll definitely follow in his footsteps. Therefore, Gongju's great shaman raised his spirit and mysteriously used his spiritual power to send a message to Yi Fei. "Little Jiu, to tell you the truth, Grandmaster Chen Liang has already persuaded the other Grandmasters to marry the god of human clan in exchange for peace for our Wu clan. It's just that our Golden Palace has never had a strong young expert who could compete with the other Golden Palace experts for this marriage. Until your appearance, Grandmaster saw hope, so he decided to let you represent our Golden Palace to fight the other young great shamans. Therefore, you must seize this opportunity. Not only can you win face for our Golden Palace, but you can also win back the Empress." What Gongju's great shaman revealed this time was indeed an absolute secret that only the higher-ups of the Wu clan knew. Moreover, Yi Fei was surprised to find that the Wu clan's marriage had not been decided yet. After all, the Wu clan was not comparable to the human clan. In the Wu clan, there were 12 great shamans. Similarly, each great shaman had their own golden palace and many subordinate. These great shamans were not stupid. They naturally knew how great the benefits of marrying the god of human clan were. In this way, the Wu clan would not only be able to open the impregnable pass of the human clan effortlessly and make the human clan yield, but also be able to make friends with the god of human clan, who had shocking battle strength. Therefore, as long as the Golden Palace could marry the daughter of a deity, they would definitely obtain great benefits in this marriage. It was also because of this reason that the 12 Golden Palaces unanimously decided to send out their most outstanding young shamans to duel to determine the winner. Which Golden Palace would marry the god of human clan? And according to Great Shaman Gongju's words, Great Shaman Chen Liang seemed to have the intention of letting Yi Fei represent the Golden Palace to fight against the other young great shamans. After digesting this top secret revealed by Great Shaman Gongju, Yi Fei's expression suddenly became extremely strange. It should be known that his purpose of coming here was to sneak into the higher-ups of the Wu clan and find a chance to assassinate the god of human clan's marriage. In the end, not only did he accidentally become the great shaman's disciple, but he also became one of the candidates for the marriage. This result was something that Yi Fei had never thought of. How is it, Brother Shang? The secret that I told you is amazing, right? Now that you know my secret, you should also tell me a secret, right? Gongzhu burped, looking drunk. He laughed and laughed, completely in a joking tone. But Gongzhu's eyes were fixed on Yi Fei, paying attention to Yi Fei's every move. But to Gongzhu's disappointment, Yi Fei's expression was still so honest and honest. At this time, it was even more serious and serious. He nodded very sincerely and said, "Since elder brother is willing to take the risk to tell me such a secret, then I won't hide it. Then I won't hide it from you anymore. Actually, I am the new emperor." "What, you are the new emperor? Ha 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 ha. I, Gongzhu, actually became sworn brothers with the new emperor. Brother, you are too funny. I can't take it anymore, I'm dying of laughter." Great Shaman Gongzhu did not wait for Yi Fei to speak and had already slapped the table and laughed wildly. Chapter 1867. This kid is quite shrewd. No wonder Shang Jiao chose him. Just like Grand Shaman Gongzhu, Grand Sovereign Chen Liang didn't take Yi Fei's honest confession to heart. Firstly, the concealment effect of the invisible god battle robe was too good. Secondly, when he attacked Yi Fei, Grand Sovereign Chen Liang had silently checked Yi Fei's body and didn't find anything wrong. Lastly, Shang Jiao's memory inheritance had caused Grand Shaman Gongzhu and Grand Sovereign Chen Liang to have a huge misunderstanding. They thought Yi Fei was just lucky to be a refugee shaman who had inherited Shang Jiao's memory inheritance. How could they have known that Yi Fei would be so daring as to publicly reveal his identity? He had even snuck into Roland's golden palace and called Grand Shaman Gongzhu his brother. Therefore, Yi Fei's act of revealing his identity didn't arouse Grand Sovereign Chen Liang's suspicion. Instead, they all thought that Yi Fei was too cunning and didn't want to reveal his secret. It seems that I'll have to think long and hard before I dig out the secret of the battle shaman. Outside the palace, Grand Sovereign Chen Liang's penetrating vision finally returned to normal. Then, he disappeared into thin air as if he had never been there. The other grand shamans in Roland's golden palace didn't notice anything strange either. Yi Fei finally heaved a sigh of relief. The other grand shamans couldn't sense Grand Sovereign Chen Liang's surveillance. However, Xiao Chao was different. Apart from spirit stones, Xiao Chao also liked to consume spirit energy. Therefore, not only was Xiao Chao very sensitive to spirit energy, but he was also very sensitive to spirit energy. Even the sorcerer god couldn't escape Xiao Chao's senses if he released his spirit energy. Yi Fei finally discovered the secret behind Grand Shaman Gongzhu becoming sworn brothers with him. It seems that Grand Sovereign Chen Liang didn't take me as his disciple simply because he wants me to represent Roland's golden palace in battle. He must have other motives. However, I don't know what those motives are. Yi Fei was a little depressed. He knew that Grand Monarch Chen Liang was up to no good, but he couldn't do anything about it. First of all, he wasn't strong enough to fight the sorcerer god. Second of all, he needed Grand Monarch Chen Liang's name to participate in the heavenly god and Chen Liang's plan. As the disciple of the sorcerer god, a gold sorcerer, and a sworn brother of sorcerer Gongzhu, even though Yi Fei had just joined Roland's palace, he was already in existence that could do whatever he wanted. However, Yi Fei didn't go out to flaunt his prowess because of this. Instead, on the second day, he moved into the palace that Gongzhu had arranged for him and prepared to go into seclusion to practice his newly acquired magus art, the god-slaying battle technique. It was only after seeing this battle skill that Yi Fei realized why even a grand monarch like Grand Monarch Chen Liang couldn't cultivate it. So, only battle shamans can practice battle techniques. Moreover, the amount of magic crystals required to cultivate a combat skill is even more terrifying. Magic crystals are mineral veins made up of spiritual crystals. Just like spiritual stones, a spiritual vein could produce countless spiritual stones. A vein of magic crystals could also produce countless spiritual crystals. For example, if Yi Fei wanted to master the god-slaying battle technique, he would have to consume the spiritual origin of his gold divine treasure if he didn't have magic crystals. Spiritual origin was the same as a warrior's blood essence. Both were constant. It was easy to consume it, but it was extremely difficult to replenish it. In particular, there were many magus arts that specialized in attacking divine treasures. Once the spiritual origin of the divine treasure was damaged, it would be very easy for hostile magi to use it to harm others. It seems that I will need a large amount of magic crystals if I want to master this magus art without any damage. But where should I go to get these magic crystals? Yi Fei was very depressed. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have killed Jin Wu. If I had captured Jin Wu, I could have easily extorted a large amount of magic crystals from the Tianfeng tribe. Only then did Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle realize that Yi Fei had suffered a great loss by killing Jin Wu. Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle looked pained. However, Ling Siki cheered Yi Fei on. Little Guogua, do your best. Brothers have the righteousness of sharing wealth. Yi Fei's dejected spirit was suddenly jolted. Why didn't I think of that? I don't have magic crystals, but Grand Shaman Gongzhu definitely has them. Since he has become my sworn brother, then when a brother is in trouble, an elder brother should be generous. Also, there's Roland's palace. Gongzhu is not the only Grand Shaman. I don't know why, but since Chun Liang wants to scheme against me, then I'm afraid that he gave me this god-slaying battle technique as another test. Since the revered master was heartless, then don't blame the disciple for being unscrupulous. After Ling Siki's reminder, Yi Fei quickly saw a great plan to make a fortune. Immediately, he didn't even cultivate his battle technique. Instead, he excitedly went to find Grand Shaman Gongzhu. Big Brother Gongzhu, when we were drinking yesterday, you said that if I have any trouble, I can look for you. Is that true or false? Yi Fei asked directly. Gongzhu was stunned for a moment when he heard this. Then, he reacted and nodded solemnly. If a brother is in trouble, Gongzhu will not shirk his duty. That's right, little Jiu, you are now the great honored master's disciple. Who in the Roland's golden palace dares to provoke you? What trouble do you have? Yi Fei scratched his head embarrassedly. Actually, it's not a big deal. It's just that I need some magic crystals to cultivate my battle technique. I don't ask for much, so I'll have to trouble elder brother to lend me 10,000 magic crystals. When I have time in the future, I will definitely return them. It's just magic crystals? I thought it was a big deal. Wait, how many magic crystals did you just say? Suddenly, Grand Shaman Gongzhu looked at Yi Fei in shock. Yi Fei flashed a toothy grin, brimming with the bashfulness of a big boy. With a simple and honest smile, he said, Big brother, I'm not asking for much. 10,000 magic crystals is enough. Your brother is a man of wealth. A mere 10,000 magic crystals is nothing to you. To be able to meet you in this life is my fortune. Brother, don't. Please spare me. 10,000 magic crystals is equivalent to 10,000 spiritual veins. My entire fortune is only about 3,000 magic crystals. Grand Shaman Gongzhu immediately began to cry about being poor. Yi Fei's eyes suddenly lit up. He smiled and said, I don't want to make things difficult for elder brother. How about this, you lend me 2,000 magic crystals. Then, tell me the names and addresses of all the grand shamans in the Roland's Golden Palace. I will borrow the rest of the magic crystals from them. What? It's not enough for you to borrow all my magic crystals? You still want to borrow from other Roland's Golden Palace shamans? Grand Shaman Gongzhu's face turned pale. He suddenly had an impulse to cut all ties with Yi Fei. However, He couldn't do anything about the fact that it was Chen Liang himself who had ordered him to keep an eye on Yi Fei. Even though Grand Shaman Gongzhu's face had already turned blue, he was still smiling in the face of Yi Fei's open extortion. Not only did he take out 2,000 magic crystals, he also gave Yi Fei a magic crystal pagoda. After that, Grand Shaman Gongzhu casually wrote a list of names, handed it to Yi Fei and said, "Brother, these are the names and addresses of all the Grand Shamans in the Roland's Golden Palace. You can go there. If you don't have enough magic crystals, just ask them." Chapter 1868. Great Sage, this is what happened. This brat is simply insane. He's infuriated by both humans and magi. It's not enough for him to borrow all my magic crystals. He even extended his evil hands to other great magi. Great Sage, please help us. Below the throne, Great Magus Gongzhu's face was filled with anger. Every time he thought of the 2,000 magic crystals that he lent out, his heart would ache faintly. He had the urge to fight to the death with Yi Fei. Of course, Gongzhu didn't know that when Yi Fei went from house to house and knocked on the doors of other gold great magi to borrow magic crystals, those gold great magi also had the urge to skin Great Magus Gongzhu alive. This was because Yi Fei's excuse for knocking on doors was very dignified. At the same time, every time he knocked on the door of a gold great magi's palace, Yi Fei would solemnly tell these gold great magi that it was Great Magus Gongzhu's good elder brother who specially instructed him to come here to borrow magic crystals. This also gave the golden great shaman, who opened the door, an illusion that Yi Fei would not have come here to borrow magic crystals. However, he could not resist the guidance of his good brother, the great shaman Gongzhu, behind Yi Fei. That was why Yi Fei had his eyes on them. Damn Gongzhu. It's fine that he's a bootlicker, but he actually dares to sacrifice our interests to flatter Great Sage's disciple. Gongzhu, I'll remember this. That Shang Jiao is Great Sage's disciple. We can't afford to offend him. However, you, Gongzhu, are just a dog by Great Sage's side. Don't tell me we can't afford to offend you. Stop scolding. I'm going to directly activate my mega spell and turn that Gongzhu into a pig. Yi Fei only went from house to house in Roland's Golden Palace. The entire Roland's Golden Palace suddenly became filled with resentment. There were really gold great magi who couldn't stand this and secretly went up to the altar to cast a spell, secretly preparing to do something evil to Gongzhu. It was said that the artifact shaman who had suffered the most losses had purposely placed many evil voodoo insects in Gongzhu's palace, hoping that Gongzhu would be bitten to death by these voodoo insects. Of course, none of this had anything to do with Yi Fei. He had successfully borrowed 10,000 magic crystal veins and found that Grand Monarch Chen Liang hadn't reacted at all. It was as if Grand Monarch Chen Liang really treated him as a disciple and tolerated his mischief. Sneering inwardly, Yi Fei didn't hesitate to return. The palace took out the pagoda filled with magic crystals. This pagoda was very similar to the Spirit Gathering Pagoda. The only difference was that one contained spirit veins while the other contained magic crystals. However, both magic crystals and spirit stones were Xiao Chao's favorite foods. Thus, when Xiao Chao sensed that the interior of the palace wasn't being monitored, she immediately ran into the magic crystal pagoda from the beast mark space. She immediately hugged the spiritual energy hidden inside the magic crystal and happily rolled around on the ground. At this time, a black mouth suddenly stretched out beside Xiao Chao. With a crunch, it bit off half of the mental energy that Xiao Chao grabbed from the magic crystal. Yi Fei and Xiao Chao's faces immediately darkened. Ling Siqi's face was full of confusion. What should I do? Xiao Chao and the dragon turtle have already started eating the magic crystals. If I don't eat them, I don't seem to fit in. As she spoke, the little girl secretly glanced at Yi Fei. Seeing that Yi Fei didn't react, she shyly stretched out her little hand and secretly grabbed a few pieces of mental energy crystals. Seeing that Yi Fei still didn't react, Ling Siqi's courage was boosted. In the end, she couldn't resist the temptation of the magic crystals and ran over. She began to refine the magic crystals at the edge of the pagoda. Yi Fei pretended that he didn't see anything. Although martial artists didn't have divine treasures and couldn't actively cultivate their mental energy, if they used some heaven and earth treasures, they could passively improve their mental energy. It was just that the effect wasn't as good as actively cultivating it. Yi Fei also knew the use of the magic crystals, which was why he decided to extort so many magic crystals at once. First, he wanted to use this matter to test Grand Sovereign Chen Liang's attitude towards him. Second, Yi Fei also needed these magic crystals to improve the strength of the human Emperor Palace when he returned to the human race's impregnable pass in the future. Now it seems that either I'm overthinking and Grand Sovereign Chen Liang really does treat me as a disciple, or Grand Sovereign Chen Liang's scheme towards me is far more than just 10,000 magic crystals. But no matter which it is, if I want to survive in this golden palace, I have to become stronger. So strong that even Grand Shaman Gongzhu and Grand Sovereign Chen Liang are wary of me. This way, no matter what the other party's scheme is, I can easily resolve it with my absolute strength. Yi Fei closed his eyes and suddenly opened his golden divine trove. In an instant, a layer of pale golden spiritual energy enveloped the magic crystals and rapidly refined them into a part of the golden divine trove. Then, a large amount of magic crystals were refined. Yi Fei's mind also began to continuously deduce the god-slaying battle skill. Vaguely, Yi Fei's mental consciousness entered a strange mental space as he cultivated the battle skill. This space was very similar to a special martial arts arena. However, it wasn't Yi Fei's physical body that was performing martial arts here, but Yi Fei's mental energy. This was the biggest difference between martial arts and battle skills. Cultivating martial arts relied on the spirit and vital essence, while cultivating battle skills relied on the divine treasure and mental energy. However, despite the difference in power, Yi Fei vaguely had a strange feeling that battle skills and martial arts seemed to be interlinked. It was as if the god-slaying battle skill he cultivated in the mental space could not only be used with mental energy, but also with mental energy, using spiritual energy to cast it, and it seemed that it could also be cast with true essence? Strange, why do I have such a strange feeling? Is it because I'm in the enemy's camp and I'm too nervous? Yi Fei couldn't help but open his eyes and look at Xiao Qiao. It wasn't until he realized that even though Xiao Qiao was competing with the dragon turtle and Ling Siqi for magic crystals, the spiritual eye of heaven and earth on his forehead was still open and alert to the abnormalities in the palace that Yi Fei finally relaxed. He understood that with Xiao Qiao around, even the sorcerer god wouldn't be able to spy on his secret. Yi Fei carefully removed the invisible god battle robe. Instantly, Yi Fei's spirit reappeared in his body. At the same time, a majestic vital essence also filled Yi Fei's body. God-slaying battle skill. Yi Fei roared and suddenly activated the majestic vital essence in his spirit. He struck out with a resplendent fist light. This fist light was the god-slaying battle skill. Strictly speaking, this battle skill was called the god-slaying fist. It was equivalent to the primordial heavenly skill of the martial Tao. However, the god-slaying battle skill was fundamentally different from other primordial heavenly skills. Strange, this god-slaying battle skill can actually be activated with vital essence. However, its power is slightly weaker than when activated with mental energy. Boom. Chapter 1869. I actually succeeded. Battle skills can really be used with true essence. Then, on the other hand, can my primordial heavenly technique be used with mental energy? This was definitely a shocking idea. In this world, shamans could only use mind power to execute shaman spells. It was almost impossible for them to use martial arts like martial artists. Yi Fei was an exception. Not only did he have divine treasures, but he also had a divine soul. Not only could he execute martial arts, but he could also execute shaman spells. Coupled with the fact that he had successfully executed a battle technique with true Yuan, Yi Fei naturally had this idea. With Xiao Qiao watching, I don't have to worry about Grand Sovereign Chen Liang spying on me. It's worth a try. Heavenly Cauldron suppressing God. Boom. Yi Fei gathered his mind power and simulated the circulation route of true Yuan in his body. Soon, he executed his best primordial heavenly art, Heavenly Cauldron suppressing God. A dazzling golden cauldron appeared in Yi Fei's hand. However, the power of the cauldron was clearly weaker than when executed with true Yuan. Ling Siki was stunned when she saw that Yi Fei could execute martial arts with mind power. Little Guogua, what you used just now didn't seem to be true Yuan? That's right. I used mind power. Oh right, Ling Siki, why don't you try hitting me and see the power of my mind power martial arts? Yi Fei's heart skipped a beat. Although Ling Siki looked innocent and naive, she was still a true demigod expert. Ling Siki didn't hold back when she heard Yi Fei's words. Her originally petite body transformed from a little girl to a fairy who had just walked out of a painting. This was the most amazing thing about the 10 Spirits creation heavenly art. When Ling Siki wasn't fighting, she was an innocent and naive little girl. Once she was in battle, she would become a majestic war goddess. Little Guogua, be careful. This is my most powerful giant spirit palm. Boom! Ling Siki slapped a huge true Yuan palm at Yi Fei. It was as big as a mountain, filling up the space of the pagoda in an instant. Then, it fell on Yi Fei's cauldron. Yi Fei's heart skipped a beat. His mind power instantly went berserk, increasing the power of the cauldron. Ling Siki's giant spirit palm slapped down, but it couldn't even break the golden light of the cauldron. How can this be? Ling Siki's eyes. Xiao Qiao was hugging the dragon turtle. Yi Fei didn't say anything. Instead, he was immersed in the comprehension of the martial Tao. After a long while, he finally opened his eyes. A wisp of wild joy and excitement flashed through his eyes. My mind power is mind power. However, 70% of its power was already enough. At least I'm a witch. And I can use martial arts boldly. If anyone doubts it, I can say it's a battle skill. Ever since Yi Fei found out that the sorcerer tribe's marriage partners had to go through a selection process, he decided to give up the plan of assassinating the sorcerer tribe's marriage partners. After all, the assassination might fail. But there were 12 golden palaces in the sorcerer tribe. In other words, Yi Fei had to defeat 12 golden palaces' young great sorcerers in a row to win the final victory. Under such circumstances, it was far from enough to rely on the blood sword and the god-slaying battle skill. After all, the young senior magi who were able to represent their respective golden palaces would definitely be the strongest. Among them, there would definitely be some geniuses who could master 4 to 5 types of golden magi, or even more. If Yi Fei wanted to win and stand out among these people, he would have to master more magi. He had to have more combat power. Unfortunately, Yi Fei only mastered 2 golden sorcerer techniques. Even among the golden great sorcerers, he was at the bottom. If he wanted to win, the only thing he could rely on was the immemorial celestial technique. The immemorial celestial technique is equivalent to the sorcerer tribe's golden sorcerer techniques. Even if I use my mental strength to cast the immemorial celestial technique, the power will only be 70%. But as long as I can master multiple immemorial celestial techniques at the same time, the power can be reversed and surpass those golden sorcerer techniques. But I have to be careful not to expose my 8 extremities, heavenly dragon. And Dutian phaseless trial. Yi Fei's expression was a little serious. The last 2 golden palaces were sovereign techniques and were his signature martial art. Once he used them, even if he had the invisible god battle robe, he would definitely arouse the sorcerer god's suspicion. Since he discovered that martial arts and battle skills could be used together, Yi Fei was not in a hurry to leave the pagoda. Instead, he began to work hard to use his mental strength to cultivate various immemorial celestial techniques. After about a month, Yi Fei officially came out of seclusion. At this moment, he was already completely familiar with using his mental strength to cast martial arts. This period of time was also the most miserable period for the Golden Great Sorcerer. There were constantly other great sorcerers from the Roland's Golden Palace who would often find trouble with the Golden Great Sorcerer. What made the Golden Great Sorcerer the most worried was that there were many sinister great sorcerers who secretly used all kinds of curses to curse him to death. Of course, Golden Great Sorcerers knew that this was definitely Yi Fei's public extortion. He had angered the other Golden Great Sorcerers and conveniently took their anger out on him. But knowing was one thing, the Golden Great Sorcerer could not say anything. When Yi Fei came out of seclusion, as a good brother, he had to hurry over and congratulate him against his will. Little 9, congratulations. Even in our Roland's Golden Palace, you are the first one to master a Golden Great Sorcerer technique in a month. You are the first one. Brother, what are you talking about? I was able to master the Fallen God battle technique because you were generous and lent me so many magic crystals. Unfortunately, the number of magic crystals is still too little. Yi Fei sighed. In the space of the pagoda, he had been practicing his battle techniques and using his mental strength to deduce the immemorial heavenly technique. 10,000 magic crystals had already been used up by most of them. Therefore, when he saw the Golden Great Sorcerer monitoring him in the name of his brother, Yi Fei naturally would not be polite. He immediately planned to find an excuse to see if he could borrow some more magic crystals. Of course, he would definitely not return these magic crystals that he borrowed. The Golden Great Sorcerer's expression suddenly changed like the weather. Even the smile on his face turned a shade green. Brother, it's not that I don't want to lend you any more magic crystals. It's just that I don't have any more magic crystals. Moreover, the battle of the 12 Roland's Golden Palaces is about to begin soon. Because I'm here this time on the orders of the Great Sorcerer. He wants you to go to the Xian Ming Hall immediately to participate in this selection. What? The selection has already begun? Alright, take me there immediately. Yi Fei let the Golden Great Sorcerer off without hesitation. Compared to extorting magic crystals, it was more important to destroy the marriage between the Divine Realm and the Sorcerer tribe. Only then did the Golden Great Sorcerer feel relieved. His pale green face also relaxed a lot. He hurriedly brought Yi Fei away from the Roland's Golden Palace to the most important palace of the Sorcerer tribe, the Xian Ming Hall. Chapter 1870. When he arrived at the Xian Ming Temple, Yi Fei was surprised to find that there was a tall statue of the wizard ancestor in the temple. The statue was of Xian Ming. It was an awe-inspiring and powerful wizard ancestor with a strong fighting spirit. The two palms of the statue were two huge fighting rings. One of them was the wizard god fighting ring, which was specially built for the wizard gods to settle their grudges. It was called the Xian Ming Upper Hall. The other was a golden fighting ring, which was specially built for golden sorcerers to fight. It was called the Xian Ming Lower Hall. One of the two temples was in the sky and the other was in the ground. It represented the strict hierarchy of the sorcerer tribe and the huge gap between the wizard gods and the great sorcerers. When Yi Fei arrived, 12 thrones had appeared in the palms of the wizard ancestor in the Xian Ming Upper Hall. On the thrones, the 12 wizard gods of the sorcerer tribe sat solemnly on their respective thrones. There were men and women, old and young, and there were also strong and weak sorcerer gods. However, Yi Fei's fighting instinct told him that although the sorcerer gods were strong, their fighting strength was only slightly higher than that of an upper martial god. Compared to the two earthly venerables, the divine realm and the human god, there was a huge gap. That's strange. The sorcerer tribe's fighting skills and martial arts can be used together and their powers are similar. Why is it that the sorcerer tribe's fighting strength is several times weaker than that of the human tribes? Yi Fei was puzzled as he looked at the high and mighty sorcerer gods. On the thrones, when Chen Liang saw Yi Fei, a trace of anticipation flashed across his eyes. He nodded slightly at Yi Fei, which was rare, and said to him telepathically, "Shang Jiu, you must give it your all in this battle. Show the glory of our Roland's golden palace, and let me see the results of your cultivation." "Yes, great sage. Don't worry, I will do my best in this battle. I definitely won't disappoint you." Yi Fei's expression was very respectful, but he didn't address Chen Liang as his master. Chen Liang didn't care about Yi Fei either. Even though he had forcefully accepted Yi Fei as his disciple, other than giving Yi Fei a copy of the Parish God battle technique, Chen Liang didn't care about Yi Fei at all. Even Gong Zhu, who was ordered to keep an eye on Yi Fei, didn't know what Chen Liang was thinking. The other sorcerer gods present were even more confused. However, this did not mean that they would not pay attention to Yi Fei. Especially after the news of Yi Fei possessing the golden treasure trove spread, many sorcerer gods were shocked. "Chen Liang, he's the kid with the golden divine treasure? What a pity! He possessed such great talent, yet he actually chose to walk down the path of the weakest battle shaman. What a waste of his talent!" These sorcerer gods felt that it was a pity. After all, battle shamans had long declined in the sorcerer tribe. Very few sorcerers would choose to walk down the path of battle shaman, unless they were desperate. Chen Liang smiled and nodded expectantly at Yi Fei, indicating that Yi Fei could enter the golden arena. Yi Fei once again performed the sorcerer's etiquette to express his respect for the sorcerer gods. Only then did he step forward and enter the golden arena. Immediately, 11 sharp gazes shot out from the 12 stone pillars in the arena. The owners of these gazes were all young and powerful golden sorcerers. Many of them were disciples of the sorcerer gods, and they were also the group of young people who were most likely to become sorcerer gods in the future. However, what disappointed Yi Fei was that when he glanced at these young sorcerers, he found that other than himself, the others were either sorcerer gods or weapon shamans. He was the only battle shaman. It seems like battle shamans have a very low status in the sorcerer tribe. But it makes sense. It's because of the decline of the battle shaman sect that no one has discovered that battle techniques and martial arts can be used together. Strictly speaking, the sorcerer tribe could also practice martial arts, but the power they used was different. Ignoring the attention of these young sorcerers, Yi Fei walked toward the stone pillar that belonged to his Roland's golden palace. There was an altar on the stone pillar. This was the place where sorcerers performed their rituals. Unlike martial artists, sorcerers rarely fought face to face. They mostly performed their rituals on the altar and borrowed the power of heaven and earth to summon the wind and rain, killing their enemies without leaving a trace. Then, Yi Fei was enraged again. He found that the altar on the stone pillar that belonged to Chen Liang's Roland's golden palace had already been occupied. The one who occupied the altar was not a golden sorcerer, but an ancient, desolate beast. Taking a closer look, it was a rare three-headed lion king beast. It was also a strange beast that many weapon shamans liked to keep in captivity. What's going on? Why is there a strange beast sitting on the stone pillar of our Roland's golden palace? When sorcerer Gongzhu saw the scene in the arena through the golden light screen, he suddenly flew into a rage. Although he already regarded Yi Fei as his mortal enemy, he also knew that Chen Liang had other plans for Yi Fei. But after all, Yi Fei was representing Chen Liang's Roland's golden palace. Now that someone had suddenly placed a lion king beast on the stone pillar that belonged to Chen Liang's Roland's golden palace, it was not just an insult to Yi Fei, but to the entire Roland's golden palace. What the hell is going on? Who is it? How dare they? Do they think that there's no one in our Roland's golden palace? How dare they let a beast sit on the stone pillar that belongs to our Roland's golden palace? I recognize that Lion King beast. It belongs to Lee Fire's golden palace. It's the mount of Grand Monarch Lee Fire. What? Grand Monarch Lee Fire? Hiss. The gold-rank sorcerers who had been clamoring just now all shut their mouths and looked in horror at the red-faced old man who was surrounded by a scarlet mist. This old man was Grand Monarch Lee Fire, the other sorcerer god of the 12 Roland's golden palaces. Yi Fei also stopped and looked at Grand Monarch Lee Fire in confusion. Finally, he looked at Grand Monarch Chen Liang. Lee Fire, you've gone too far this time. Why should we interfere in the affairs of young people? Grand Monarch Chen Liang was also somewhat displeased. After all, Yi Fei was still his disciple on the surface. To secretly arrange for a beast to occupy the stone pillar like Lee Fire had done was not only an insult to Yi Fei, but also a disgrace to him. Faced with this question, Lee Fire's face was completely cold. Chen Liang, for your sake, I'll let your disciple die with some understanding. Jin Wu is my grandson. Since he had the guts to kill Jin Wu, he must pay a price. What? Jin Wu is your grandson? The man your daughter married is Jin Shi. No wonder. I miscalculated this time. Grand Monarch Chen Liang took a deep look at Lee Fire, then sat down with a gloomy face and no longer spoke. Many of the other sorcerer gods were still shocked. Although they knew that Grand Monarch Lee Fire had a daughter, none of them had seen her before, let alone thought that Lee Fire and Jin Shi had such a relationship. Chapter 1871. Grand Monarch Li Hua's means were undoubtedly very clever. His revenge for Jin Shi was only secondary. His main purpose was to use this matter to suppress Grand Monarch Chen Liang and get rid of a competitor in advance. Those who could become sorcerer gods were all discerning people. Naturally, they could see Grand Monarch Li Hua's real intention. They were all secretly delighted. After all, there could only be one golden palace that could marry a divine god. Suppressing Chen Liang's golden palace in advance was also a great advantage for them. Therefore, all the sorcerer gods present collectively remained silent. They just watched all this with mocking eyes. Most of the young gold sorcerers in the golden arena were the same. When they saw that the Lion King beast was only staring at Yi Fei without any specific action, the young man from Lee Fire's golden palace was even more furious. He immediately shouted angrily, "What are you waiting for? He's your food today. Eat him. I, Yu Ming, want his golden divine treasure." Roar. The Lion King beast's 3 heads also roared angrily. Seeing that there were no sorcerer gods to stop it, the Lion King beast's ferocity was completely aroused. A black shadow instantly jumped down from the stone pillar and pounced on Yi Fei. But what surprised many gold sorcerers was that facing this terrifying Lion King beast, Yi Fei seemed not to feel the attack. He was still striding forward, toward the altar where Chen Liang's golden palace was located. However, in the process of walking, a terrifying murderous intent and anger suddenly erupted from Yi Fei's body. A scarlet blood sword appeared behind him. In his hands, he clenched his fists tightly, shining with a layer of golden fist radiance. Sorcerer art, golden blood sword. Combat skill, perish god. Whoosh. Yi Fei held the blood sword in one hand and waved his golden fist in the other. He never stopped walking. Just as the Lion King beast pounced on him, he cut off the Lion King beast's head in the middle with his sword. Then, both of his fists exploded at the same time, like a battle sorcerer slaughtering gods and demons. Many sorcerers only saw a dazzling golden light emitting a dazzling and bright light. Then, a soaring blood radiance filled the entire golden arena. Boom! Yi Fei walked forward to the altar on the stone pillar. Behind him was the Lion King beast, which was comparable to the martial god realm. At the same time, Yi Fei was holding a huge lion head. and he suddenly threw it at Yu Ming, who had been clamoring for a while. You are a refugee. Yi Fei was the sorcerer god. How? You, how? You? Was. Li, was. The instant he came back to his senses, Yu Ming's hair was already disheveled, and he ascended the altar to cast a spell. He summoned a void python out of thin air, and it bit towards Yi Fei together. Grand Venerable Li Hua, who was sitting on the throne, saw this scene. His expression changed. A battle sorcerer. How can he kill my mount? One had to know that the Lion King beast was no ordinary exotic beast, since it could become the sorcerer god's mount. It was an exotic beast that was comparable to a low-level martial god. To a sorcerer who had just become a gold sorcerer, it was definitely a nightmare. Grand Venerable Li Hua, who was sitting on the throne, never dreamed that Yi Fei could be so casual. He could kill a lower martial god just like that. The golden divine treasure is really extraordinary. It's worthy of the legendary sorcerer god's body. If he doesn't die, he will become a sorcerer god. That's strange. Isn't the battle shaman faction the cannon fodder at the bottom of the food chain? How can his battle techniques be so powerful? Many sorcerer gods were interested in Yi Fei, but there were also many sorcerers who were disdainful of Yi Fei's battle techniques. Humph, the battle sorcerer sect is useless except for being meat shields and cannon fodder on the battlefield. I'll let you know how big the gap is between a lowly refugee like you and us nobles. Yu Ming's body was burning with flames. While summoning a large number of void pythons, his body also expanded. Suddenly, he turned into an innate fiend god with a human face and a snake body. He shook his snake tail and opened his poisonous fangs. Like the king of snakes, he swooped down on Yi Fei. Sorcery, god perishing! Yi Fei didn't retreat. At this moment, his fists burst out with bright golden fist light again. At the same time, the blood sword floating behind him whistled. Under the control of Yi Fei's mind power, it seemed to come alive and turned into a terrifying mountain of blood swords. It crashed down and smashed the whole golden arena. The void pythons that were pouncing on Yi Fei didn't even have time to scream before they were crushed into meat paste. Kill! I'll eat you with my own mouth! Yu Ming roared, his serpentine tongue flicking out of his human face. His terrifying serpentine body was dripping with blood, and countless claws stretched out from within. Each of these claws formed a different blood seal and slapped forward forcefully. The huge mountain of blood swords collapsed in a split second. Yu Ming seized this opportunity. His snake body moved as fast as lightning, coiling and surging violently. Like a golden wave, he stirred up the entire space, causing it to explode loudly. A terrifying zone of nothingness appeared. Yi Fei's expression didn't change. However, when he used the god-perishing battle technique, he suddenly used the heavenly cauldron suppressing god and dragon suppressing 9 heavens in succession. Roar! A terrifying blood-chi dragon suddenly roared out of Yi Fei's body. Its huge dragon tail slammed into Yu Ming's snake tail, immediately smashing the stone pillars and altar they stood on into smithereens. However, Yi Fei still didn't retreat. At this moment, he used the greater void step again. With one step, he crossed layers of the void and suddenly appeared in front of Yu Ming, who had a human head and a snake body. Then, a golden cauldron formed by psychic power and the god-perishing fist smashed into Yu Ming's body with a boom. A loud boom. Yu Ming's eyes widened in shock. His huge snake body tumbled and flew out of the golden arena. Then, he exploded in the air, dying a violent death. Yu Ming actually died so easily. Boom. On the other stone pillars, the remaining 10 young Grand Magi couldn't help but show a look of horror on their faces. On the throne, Grand Monarch Li Huo was so angry that the flames all over his body turned into a terrifying black sun, melting the throne behind him into molten iron. Chen Liang, this disciple of yours is very good. Not only did he kill my grandson, but he also dared to kill my Lion King beast and my disciple in front of me. Grand Monarch Chen Liang also stood up coldly and said in a deep voice, "Once in the arena, life and death are determined by fate. You set this rule. Therefore, when you secretly sent your Lion King beast to kill my disciple, I had nothing to say, and I wouldn't have intervened to save him. By the same logic, Shang Jiu killed your disciple." Chapter 1872. Chen Liang, how dare you go against me? Grand Monarch Li Huo was seething with anger. He had been holding back until now because he wanted to take advantage of this competition to kill Yi Fei. He wanted to avenge Yi Fei for killing Jin Wu, and at the same time severely damage the prestige of Chen Liang's Golden Palace. However, the terrifying fighting strength that Yi Fei suddenly showed had shattered all of his plans. Chen Liang's Golden Palace suffered great losses. When had Grand Venerable Li Huo ever suffered such humiliation? Humph, we're both Grand Venerables. If you want to fight, how can I not accompany you? I still say the same thing. Once you enter the arena, life and death are up to fate. Grand Venerable Chen Liang did not back down. It seemed that he suddenly attached great importance to Yi Fei, and began to protect Yi Fei with all his strength. The other sorcerer gods did not want things to turn sour and ruin the marriage between Yi Fei and the divine god. They all stood up and tried to persuade them, "Please calm down. Since we set the rules together, we must abide by them. If we break the rules, it won't be good for anyone." Seeing that the other sorcerer gods had begun to interfere, Li Huo suppressed his anger and said fiercely, "Fine, Chen Liang, you insist on protecting this kid, right? I won't let you have your way. All of you, listen up. Whoever can kill Shang Jiu in the arena will not only be able to obtain his golden divine treasure, but I will also be able to obtain it. I will also personally teach him a god-level sorcery." Grand Venerable Li Huo was so angry that he made such a big promise. Only sorcerer gods could master god-level sorcery, which was equivalent to the cultivation method of earthly venerable martial artists. As soon as such a promise was made, the remaining 10 young grand sorcerers in the golden arena were immediately moved. Then, 10 pairs of greedy and indifferent eyes stared coldly at Yi Fei. Feeling these eyes, Yi Fei's heart sank. He faced them coldly and said, "What, you also want my golden divine treasure?" His indifferent tone made the weak young grand sorcerers feel a chill in their hearts. If Yi Fei had just entered the arena, they would not have taken Yi Fei seriously at all. But when Yi Fei killed the Lion King beast in a few moves, and then defeated Yu Ming, no one dared to underestimate Yi Fei anymore. Humph, so what if I want your golden divine treasury? Not only do I want your divine treasury, I also want your life. Suddenly, on the stone pillar, a golden youth walked down the altar with an incomparably haughty air. When they saw the young man, many people's eyes changed, and Grand Shaman Gongzhu screamed, "It's over, it's actually Xian Tian." Among all the young senior magi in the 12 gold palaces, Xian Tian is definitely one of the best. Yi Fei also stared coldly at Xian Tian, who was walking down. Then, he looked at the other stone pillars and said, "What about you? Who else wants my golden divine treasure? Step forward. Insolent refugee, your status is as low as mud. How dare you shout at us nobles? I want your divine treasury. What can you do about it?" "Me too. I don't want your divine treasury. I want your body to be refined into a corpse puppet." 2 more powerful young senior magi stood up on the stone pillars. Their auras were comparable to Xian Tian's. They were undoubtedly the top group of young people in the 12 gold palaces. When they saw these people attacking together, another 3 gold senior magi stood up on the stone pillars without saying a word. Their eyes flickered, and they also decided to attack Yi Fei. God-level magi were really too precious, and they didn't want to give up this rare opportunity. In the end, only 2 young senior magi were left on the stone pillars. They sat awkwardly on the altar. It wasn't that they didn't want to attack Yi Fei, but their strength was similar to Yu Ming's. They were not Yi Fei's opponent at all. In the end, they could only bide their time regretfully. However, the eyes of these 2 people were also flickering. Occasionally, a cold light flashed in their eyes, as if they were ready to seize the opportunity to give Yi Fei a killing blow. At this point, with Grand Venerable Li Hua's words, Yi Fei stood against all the gold senior magi in the entire gold arena. Senior Magus Gongzhu's face changed dramatically. It's over. We can't get back the 2,000 magic crystals we lent out. Grand Venerable Chun Liang's eyelids also twitched. Suddenly, he said telepathically, Shangjiu, if you can't beat them, escape from the gold arena. Even if you lose face, you can save your life. Escape? Are they earthly venerables or celestial venerables? A bunch of clay chickens and pottery dogs. Since all of you want my gold divine trove, then all of you can come together. Yi Fei suddenly laughed loudly. He might run for other things, but he absolutely couldn't run away from this battle. This was not only for the dignity of a martial artist, but also for Zhao Yu. He couldn't watch Zhao Yu become a sacrifice for a political marriage. Even if there was no other choice and they really had to marry her, he would be the one to step forward and be the one to marry her. Kill. Yi Fei held the blood sword that was still dripping with blood and suddenly charged toward Xian Tian, who was the first to step forward. Xian Tian was immediately enraged. His murderous aura formed a terrifying spiritual fluctuation that squeezed the entire gold arena, causing it to shake violently. 10,000 arrows piercing the heart. Xian Tian roared. The entire gold arena was suddenly filled with countless spiritual arrows. Like a storm, like shooting stars, they shattered the void and shook the entire gold arena. Countless cracks appeared on the ground of the gold arena, as well as dark arrow holes. Perish the gods! Dazzling fist light shook the galaxy. Yi Fei's gold divine treasury was fully activated. He once again performed the Perish the Gods battle skill, causing his fists to be covered in layers of dazzling golden halos that swept through the fallen leaves like a gale. All the arrows that approached him were shattered. Not a bad battle skill. Unfortunately, you're still going to die. Now, I'll let you know the terror of us sorcerers. 10,000 arrows shatter the soul. Xian Tian's expression was arrogant. The spiritual nebula between his eyebrows spun crazily, forming a spiritual attack that was like a stormy sea. Under his spiritual control, countless rays of light suddenly burst out from the arrow holes that had already pierced through the gold arena. They actually returned from behind and rushed toward Yi Fei. His body. Heavenly cauldron suppresses the gods. Dragon suppresses the 9 heavens. Yi Fei roared in his heart. The blazing spiritual light once again condensed into a gold battle cauldron and a gold dragon. The gold dragon coiled around the gold battle cauldron, suppressing the universe. This wasn't the end. When he activated these 2 immemorial celestial arts, Yi Fei once again released all the spiritual power of his gold divine treasury, instantly releasing all the 6 paths and 7 arts of the 6 paths sacred sect. Boom! Suddenly, dragons roared, gods howled, demons howled, and ghosts howled around Yi Fei. At this moment, Yi Fei was like a demon that had walked out of hell. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.